Brookland News Live begins right now. Here's Mitchell.
Hi everybody, welcome to Brookland News Live. Good to be with you all. I'm Jackson Mitchell. We are monitoring a number of stories. We are going to get to that. But happening right now, we want to take you to this first feed of the day because Secretary of State Marco Rubio is taking questions from reporters over at the State Department. Let's go live there and listen in.
Que coopera abiertamente con elementos terroristas, y por eso consideramos el régimen de Maduro un régimen terrorista, cooperan abiertamente con elementos terroristas que amenazan la seguridad de Estados Unidos. Punto. Ese es nuestro interés y en eso estamos enfocados. Okay, next row right there. You, yeah.
With all due respect for my colleagues, I'm going to ask this one in Spanish.
Okay.
Señor secretario, usted acaba de decir que no espera o que no es la intención de Estados Unidos que las diferencias con el presidente Gustavo Petro generen afectaciones para la relación con Colombia. Pero la verdad es que sí las han generado. Colombia fue desertificada, el presidente Donald Trump ordenó suspensión de recursos de cooperación para nuestro país y ya se están viendo consecuencias en materia de seguridad en Colombia. Nada más anoche asesinaron a 6 soldados colombianos, el ELN, con un atentado terrorista. Y la gran pregunta en Colombia hoy es ¿qué va a pasar el próximo año si Colombia elige un presidente de izquierda? Si las relaciones de Estados Unidos, las buenas relaciones con Colombia y el respaldo de Estados Unidos va a depender de que el pueblo colombiano elija un presidente que sea visto con buenos ojos por parte de esta administración.
No, pero que esto no se trata de izquierda ni derecha. Esto se trata de una persona que simplemente no coopera con nosotros en estos esfuerzos. De eso se trata. Al final del día, el pueblo colombiano va a escoger el próximo presidente. Es una democracia, tienen elecciones, esperemos que se cumplan todos los requisitos. Tienen una larga historia de cumplir los requisitos democráticos. Aquí no estamos diciendo que Petro no fue electo democráticamente, aquí nadie dice que no fue así. Pero en fin, esto no se trata de izquierda ni derecha, se trata de tener en poder un presidente que coopera con nosotros. Obviamente, sin duda, la postura que era tomada en contra de Estados Unidos ha afectado a nuestra relación, no hay duda de eso ninguna. Estamos tratando de limitar eso lo más posible, pero también tenemos intereses que tenemos que proteger. Y tampoco vamos a pretender, cuando tienes un presidente diciéndole a los elementos de seguridad que no cooperen con Estados Unidos, eso no lo podemos ignorar. Pero por otra parte, entendemos que tenemos dentro del sistema colombiano, incluso al nivel legislativo, en el Congreso, en el Senado, también alcaldes y otros líderes políticos de ese país que sí quieren buenas relaciones con Estados Unidos, y incluso líderes que no son de derecha, que son de izquierda, pero que entienden la importancia de esa relación. Pero esto no se trata de ni izquierda ni derecha, se trata que si va a cooperar con Estados Unidos o no. Tenemos una larga historial de cooperar con Colombia, que fue un ejemplo y un modelo para la región, y ahora tenemos algo un poco menos, que es lamentable. Ojalá que eso cambie. The question was about whether the U.S. relations to Colombia is dependent on whether they elect a leader that's center-right or center-left. It has nothing to do with left or right. It has to do very simply with whether or not we have a leader there that we can work with. The U.S.-Colombian relationship, especially our security relationship, but also our economic one with the free trade agreement, is a model. It was a model for the region. We tried to replicate that. Everybody would use Plan Colombia as an example of what you need to do in these other places. And we want to continue that. Now, no doubt, when you have the president of a country saying some of the things and ordering some of the things that he's ordered, it's going to have an impact on some of that relationship. Our job is to try to preserve and protect as much of that relationship as possible, but it will be impacted. But it doesn't matter whether the next president is center-right or center-left. That's not the issue. The issue is whether the next president is someone who's going to, once again, cooperate with the United States and restart these relations. That's what we seek. And if President Petro changes in his stance, perhaps that could change as well. But if he doesn't, obviously, it'll be up to the people of Colombia to elect their next president. Yes, ma'am, right there in the middle. I don't want you guys to think I'm only picking the Spanish ones, okay? I actually don't know who any, well, there's a list here, but I can't even read it without these glasses. All right. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Perdón.
Secretario Rubio, usted lleva años denunciando el régimen de Nicolás Maduro y estuvo, entiendo, hace poco en una conversación telefónica donde hablaron el presidente Trump y Nicolás Maduro. Quisiera preguntarle cómo sintió a Nicolás Maduro en esa conversación, usted que lo conoce desde hace años, pues su comportamiento, si siente que está acorralado como reportan los medios, si está abierto a irse a otro país a cambio de un indulto, si ustedes estarían pensando en reunirse con él. ¿Cómo fue esa conversación? O sea, ¿qué nos puede contar del efecto que está teniendo sobre la presión?
Yo no voy a comentar sobre ninguna conversación del presidente Trump con cualquiera del mundo, y si existió o no existió. Yo no voy a comentar sobre eso. Voy a repetir lo que he dicho ya. Esto se trata de algo muy simple, y esto se trata de los intereses nacionales de Estados Unidos. Y hay una amenaza regional que existe, y en el caso de Venezuela no tenemos cooperación. Para empezar, que es un régimen ilegítimo. Segundo, que es un régimen que no coopera, es antiamericano en todos sus pronunciamientos y actuaciones. Y tercero, es un régimen que no solamente no coopera con nosotros, sino abiertamente coopera con elementos peligrosos, terroristas y criminales. Incluso ellos mismos lo son. Entonces es difícil llegar a un acuerdo con terroristas que están abiertamente cooperando con estos elementos peligrosos que amenazan la seguridad de Estados Unidos. Encima de eso no voy a especular más.
Pero va a haber guerra, secretario, porque ahorita en Colombia todo el mundo se está levantando en Venezuela con la posibilidad de que haya una guerra entre Estados Unidos y Colombia.
Nosotros estamos protegiendo el interés nacional de Estados Unidos. Yo creo que, en fin, ese es nuestro derecho. Y también le diré que en Colombia debe haber mucha preocupación, que ha habido un ataque el día antes de ayer, o fue ayer, de ELN, o la FARC, creo que fue ELN, y ¿de dónde operan ellos? Abiertamente, de territorio venezolano, abiertamente, como si fueran un país soberano, operando abiertamente dentro del territorio venezolano. It's the same question, guys, and that is, the bottom line is very simple. Our interest in Venezuela and in the region is the national interest of the United States, and in Venezuela we have an illegitimate regime that not only does not cooperate with the United States, but openly cooperates with narco-terrorists and others who threaten the national security of our country. The gentleman in the middle. I'm going to try to get to everybody, I promise. But you guys, by then, your questions will be
Thank you,
more
Mr. Secretary.
specific.
You said a few moments ago that everyone wants peace for Gaza, and yet by any metric, the Israelis are flouting the ceasefire that President Trump negotiated by killing an average of 2 children a day, not allowing the agreed-upon humanitarian aid into Gaza. How long can this continue? How long can the Israelis be allowed to show such disrespect to President Trump?
Well, look, that's your characterization of it, about the term disrespect. What I would say is this. This was, first of all, it was a miracle that it happened in the first place. We all understand how difficult it was for that to come to the conclusion that it did, where the bombing and everything else, the scale and scope of what we saw ended, all the hostages were released, and we have relative peace right now for the most part, despite the things you're pointing to. That was very difficult. But this is not easy. Peace is a verb. It's not. It's an action. It's not a sentiment. Every single day will bring challenges. Every single day. We also have had instances, for example, over the last couple of weeks, where Hamas elements emerged from a tunnel, attached an explosive device to the side of a vehicle, and injured and almost killed Israeli soldiers. We still have this threat. We still have and see every single day Hamas openly taking steps to strengthen themselves within inside of those places in Gaza that they still control. We saw early on the atrocities they were committing in the streets against people as they were trying to show people how strong they were. So I don't think I'm standing here to tell you this is going to be easy. This is an hour-by-hour, day-by-day challenge. It's one of the reasons why we have stood up this center there in operating in Israel, in partnership as well with another cell that exists in a regional country. It's why every single day there are meetings among both intelligence, diplomatic, and military officials of multiple countries that help bring about this deal to manage this. And that's why it is so critical. It is so critical and so key that we move to complete this first phase, that we move to put in place the border peace, get everybody agree to be a part of it, move to put in place this Palestinian technocratic organization so that they can begin to provide some governance structure, and move to put in place the stabilization force. That's the goal here, but it's not going to be easy. Every day will bring new challenges to that, and we recognize those challenges are coming from all sides.
Very quick follow-up there, but who's going to want to be a part of a stabilization force if Israel is effectively using Gaza as a free fire zone?
Well, these are the things that we're working through right now. That's why it didn't happen yesterday. That's why we didn't, I don't mean yesterday literally, that means why we're not there yet. This is the hard work of diplomacy and peacemaking. Peacemaking isn't just signing a piece of paper, it's actually complying with it. And compliance oftentimes requires, in many cases, in most cases, requires daily, constant follow-up and nurturing. So that is why we are in such a hurry, and I say as a priority, to get to this point where we have the stabilization force in place, overseen by the Board of Peace, and ultimately a Palestinian technocratic entity that can increase in its capability to provide governance. The stronger they are, the weaker Hamas will be in terms of threatening Israel. And I think the more security Israel should feel, and the less need for some of these things to happen. But no one's claiming this is going to be easy. We have to work on this every single day. We have people in this building and deployed abroad. This is all they do. 24 hours a day, day after day, elements of the State Department, the Department of War, and all other agencies, including Jared and Steve, and even myself, who talk or do something about. There isn't a day in the last, since this was signed 2 months ago, that I haven't had to do something with regards to making progress on the phases of the ceasefire. Yes, ma'am. Right next.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm sorry.
Secretary.
I'm going to get to you guys. I'm coming. See, I'm going down the rows like this.
Thank you.
So right behind you, 'cause I'm still in that row.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you for having the
Has
briefing.
anyone ever done this where they go like all the rows?
No.
You're going to look so good to your editors. You know? All right, go ahead.
Caroline Lumetta with World News Group. Several faith-based organizations have been calling on the administration to reopen the U.S. refugee admissions program, particularly for religious minorities facing persecution. That includes Afghanistan, Syria, Iran. Is it going to be a goal in 2026 to expand that program again beyond South Afrikaners?
Yeah, so here's the problem, okay? In the last 4 years, we had a flood of people enter this country through a variety of means. So that's what we confronted. We have to stop that, and we did. We've been successful. You see the border secured, the number of illegal entries has completely collapsed. And now we're facing a second challenge, and that is we've admitted a lot of people into the United States. And perhaps the overwhelming majority of them are not bad people and so forth. This is all true. But there are people, we know, okay, for a fact, that there are people in this country who got in through some form of vetting that was wholly insufficient. And we've seen tragic evidence of that very recently, including people that we claim to have vetted. So, why does that happen? Because there are some places where you can't vet people. You can only vet people on the basis of information you have about them. But that information is oftentimes dependent on whether there's some local authority that actually has any information about them. Okay, so that is the challenge we're facing, which is why the president has sort of put a stop to all of these things until these systems for admitting people into our country can be improved. But I think everyone would understand that after a flood of 15 to 20 million people into our country, almost unrestrained in some extent, over the last 4 years before taking over in January of this year, there's a desire in our country to put a stop to that until we can fix these processes to ensure that not only do we know who's in the country now, but in the future, we're not going to face some of these challenges that we faced in the past. So, look, the United States remains the most generous country in the world when it comes to legal immigration. This year alone, close to 1 million people will enter this country legally and have their green card and go to work. But we do have a right, like every sovereign country does, to know who you are, why you're coming, what you've done in the past, and what we think you might or might not do in the future. We have a right. We have a right to make sure that you're not going to come to this country and pose a burden on our social safety network. All of these things are rights of sovereign countries. A bunch of sovereign countries in the world do it. Most of the countries in the world have far more restrictive immigration policies than the United States has ever had. But we are in a special period right now. This is not like business as usual. This is, right now, we are less than a year removed from the most reckless migratory incompetence in American history, where a flood of people and mass migration events entered the United States. And they can claim all they want that they vetted people. This is just not true. Some of them were cursory vetting, and in some cases, you couldn't vet them, because the countries or places they came from had no documents upon which they could be vetted on. So that program will be studied, and it will not be restarted at the scale and scope it was until we are comfortable that it is one that we know everyone who's coming in and who they are and whether they meet the criteria for admission to the United States.
Do you
Yes,
have
ma'am.
any sort of
Thank you
timeline
so
for
much,
that?
Mr. Secretary. A follow-up on the conversation between President Trump and Maduro, because the day after the conversation, the president said he was going to be meeting that gentleman very soon. Is this still being considered? Is the president still considering that? Is still a chance for diplomacy on Venezuela? And also, any role that you see Brazil could play? Because just a few weeks ago, President Lula spoke with President Trump and Nicolas Maduro.
Alrighty, it looks as if we might be having some feed troubles there. We will wait to get that back. As soon as we do, we will take you back live there. And we have that feedback. Let's go back live over to the State Department.
I have no reason to express skepticism or optimism about it. I'm just not going to comment on what the president has available to him as options across the range of options. I'm just not going to comment on what the president has available to him as options across the range of options that include diplomatic options.
And how about the conversation with Lula?
I mean, I think he said to us what he has said publicly, and that he has a willing to play a positive role in that regard. You know, the president's had 2 phone conversations and 1 meeting with President Lula. I think we've made progress on some things, including on trade. We have more work to be done. The 2 presidents got along. We felt that was important in terms of those conversations. I've talked to Mauro, their foreign minister, on it, including this earlier this week. And we have a lot of issues in common with Brazil that we'd like to work together on, and strong links. Being from Florida, as an example, I know how important Brazil has been to us as a partner. We've had some disagreements on a couple things over the years as well, but I feel like that relationship is on a positive trajectory. But as far as its role in Venezuela, I don't have anything to provide you on that today of any specificity.
Just a
Yes,
quick
sir.
follow-up on
Thank
the
you.
tariffs, political tariffs
No,
on
I got to
Brazil.
get to him.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you very much for doing this. On phase 2 in Gaza, when is the soonest that we could see that being implemented? And then separately, you said at the top that you want the US to play the role of mediator that brings about the avoidance of war and ending conflicts. How do you square that position with a possible military intervention in Venezuela? Thank you.
Well, first of all, a couple things. Wanting to pursue peace and secure peace does not necessarily come at the expense of your national interest. We reserve the right and retain the option of defending our national interest. Now, in the case, again, we're going to talk about Venezuela. Let's be clear. Maduro has made multiple deals with elements around the world, including with the Biden administration. Okay, Maduro made a deal with the Biden administration, and here's the deal he made. And I only say this to you not because we want to get back to that deal, but just as an example of why the guy cannot be trusted to keep deals. It's a problem. Okay, somebody breaks deals multiple times. You have a right to be skeptical they're ever going to keep the deal. He made a deal, and as part of that deal, they lifted sanctions. They released his 2 nephews from federal custody after their conviction. They sent back his bagman, Alex Saab, and all these sorts of things. He released political prisoners, and he promised to have free and fair elections. He didn't have free and fair elections. He rearrested or exiled most of those political prisoners, so he pocketed all the benefits and lived to none of those commitments. So, look, it's hard to have and do a deal with someone who never keeps a deal. Now, on the broader perspective of what you're asking about, let's be mature here. Yes, there are issues where we want to pursue peace if that is possible, but we also have our national interest. If our national, we're not going to reach a peace deal with narco trafficking bans. We're not. We can't reach a peace deal with MS-13. We can't reach a peace deal with Tren de Aragua. We can't reach a peace deal with the ELN or the FARC that are still pumping drugs into the United States or any of their cartels in Mexico. You can't do a peace deal with these people any more than you could do a peace deal with the mafia. So I think it's important to understand that's different between warring factions and nation states around the world where we feel like maybe we could act as a bridge to bringing about the differences. But when you're talking about things that directly implicate the national interest of the United States, and no one can argue that transnational criminality and terrorism in our hemisphere is not a threat to the national interest of the United States, we reserve the right and have the right to utilize every element of national power to defend the national interest of the United States. And no one can dispute that. And every country in the world reserves the same option. We just simply have more power than some of them do.
And phase 2, Gaza?
Oh, phase 2 Gaza, yeah. I mean, we got to complete phase 1 to get to phase 2. That's why we're working every day to get there. Look, guys, if this stuff was easy, it would have been done already a long time ago. This is a complex situation. No one would dispute it, but it's important. What we achieved already, what the president achieved ending that war already was something no one thought was possible. Everyone thought that the last episode was going to be an Israeli incursion into Gaza City that would lead to massive loss of life and the hostages would never be reunited with their families. And today, as we speak, all the hostages that were living are back, all but I believe one of the bodies has been returned. No one would have believed that 6 months ago. So that in and of itself, but that is not the end of the story. We want to continue on this. But what we're talking about is dealing with something that no one has been able to solve in 30 or 40 years. No one. And it's going to take some time. But I feel generally optimistic that we have the right people at the table with the right motivations to make it happen. But no one is claiming to you that this is going to be just a straight up trajectory. It's going to have its ups and downs. It's going to have its good days and bad days. The important point is that the momentum and the trajectory on it is a positive trajectory. And we're investing high levels of our government every day in trying to make that happen. But we can't do it alone. We have all these other partners that we have to include. So I would focus you on, let's get the board of peace in place and announced. Let's get the technocratic Palestinian group in place. And then let's get the stabilization force in place. And then we can move on to the other elements, the phase 2 and phase 3 of the plan, that hopefully will be what will be enduring. And the work of putting phase 2 and phase 3 in place is going to extend far beyond the next 3 years. I mean, this is a generational commitment. But we want to leave those pieces in place for the next administration to continue to build upon, even as we achieve phase 1 and parts of phase 2 during this administration. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, some of your former Democratic former Senate colleagues who considered you one of their most trusted bipartisan partners have, since you joined the Trump administration, accused you of abandoning some of your former principles and positions. And 3 or 4 have said they regret voting for you.
Well, I had 99 votes. I could have spared 4.
What's your response to that? And more importantly, how do you think about building and maintaining bipartisan consensus and cooperation on foreign policy at this moment, especially because that will be necessary to sustain President Trump's legacy after he leaves office.
I mean, we live in a very different time, unfortunately. I engage with senators, for example, from both parties. We saw a bunch of them the other day all the time. And obviously, but politics today is very different than it was 10 or 20 years ago. It just is. I'm not in that anymore. I'm no longer in a political office, but I know political offices. I served 14 years in the Senate, and politics is real, right? I mean, there's also not a lot of benefit to a Democratic senator saying what a great guy Marco Rubio is in this current political environment, or anyone in the Trump administration for that matter. So all I will tell you is I get up every day, we go to work, we get work done, we do cooperate and work with. They don't always agree with everything we're doing, but I have a lot of people in the Senate, particularly chairman of key committees that we interact with. There's things people can say and do in the public that because of politics in private that they can't say or do in public. But I don't know what else to comment on that other than one more point, and that is, I think this is important. I think people have lost sort of their mindset here a little bit, okay? The foreign policy, the State Department is not its own government, okay? The Secretary of State is not its own government. I'm appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate, and then, or nominated by the President, confirmed by the Senate, and then appointed by the President. But at the end of the day, the person the people of the United States elected to be the President of the United States and the Commander-in-Chief is Donald J. Trump. That's who they elected. And my job, and the job of the people in our administration, is to implement the President's foreign policy. We provide advice, we provide counsel, but ultimately our job is to take what the President wants to do, take his vision, and implement it. Come up with options for implementing the President's vision. That's my job today. When I was a senator, I represented the state of Florida. Today, I am the Secretary of State for Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States, and my job is to implement the President's foreign policy, provide advice, provide counsel, provide ideas, provide for opportunities and ways in which his foreign policy can be implemented. But in the end, our job is to implement that. And why people think that somehow foreign policy can be divorced from our republic, that's not the way our Constitution works. The Constitution does not say you elect the President of the United States and then you put in place a State Department to undermine the President if the person who's the Secretary of State doesn't agree with him. That's ridiculous. That's stupid, really. And I don't know why anybody would think that. So that's the job I have, and that's the job I'm proud to do. I think we've made a lot of progress. We have a lot more work to do. All right, on our row right there from Italy, right? I know you from the...
Yes.
Do you cover us now, or are you on Capitol Hill still?
No, everything.
Both. So you're like a one-man bureau for the whole
well
thing.
as
All right.
here.
You're like me. You have two jobs. Good.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So the United States, on one hand, are mediating with Russia to end the war in Ukraine. But on the other hand, the Russian foreign minister yesterday or the day before said it would be a fatal mistake from the U.S. To block the oil tanks from Venezuela and trying to overthrow the Maduro regime. So what kind of what's this?
Alrighty, so again, this is the Secretary of State there, Marco Rubio, taking plenty of questions there. Still a lot of questions to go. We will keep our eyes on where that goes. Here's what I want to do here. I want to take a look at some of those headlines that we are following right now. There you go. They should be on your screen beginning now because there is a lot going on right now. I want to take you to a live look over at the White House as we go through these. We do have an update in the Brown University shooting. We do want to start with that. We have an entire segment, of course, planned out for that. The shooter has been found dead after a possible connection to the MIT shooting. Before we delve into kind of the rest of what's all going on here in this shooting, let's take you to what's all happening now. Here's a package I did.
Details are emerging in the investigation into the Brown University shooting. Authorities now say the suspect who killed 2 people and injured 9 others is also believed to be responsible for the killing of a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The shooting happened Saturday inside of a classroom at Brown University's engineering building review session. Students say panic broke out as gunfire erupted, sending people scrambling for exit and shelter. Police launched an immediate multi-state manhunt as the suspect fled the scene. For days, investigators followed leads across New England, releasing limited information while asking the public for tips. 2 days later, another shooting, this time in Brookland, Massachusetts, leaving an MIT professor dead. Authorities now say evidence connects both attacks to the same suspect.
He rented a car in Boston. He drove it. We were able to find that car in New Hampshire. We were able to find evidence in the car side that connected this individual to our crime scene here in Rhode Island. We were able to find visual evidence of him inside that storage facility, which, in my judgment, matches him to the Massachusetts scene.
The manhunt came to an end Thursday night when police found the suspect dead inside of a storage facility in New Hampshire from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Officials say there is no longer a threat to the public and believe the alone. Investigators are still working to determine a motive, while Brown University has canceled finals and expanded counseling service for students and staff. Reporting for you, Jackson Mitchell, Brooklyn News.
Alrighty, so that was kind of the latest update here. We're getting some reaction in from Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Director. She says, quote, the Brown University shooter, Claudio Manuel Neves Valentina, entered the United States through the Diversity Lottery Immigrant Visa Program in 2017. He was granted a green card. The heinous individual should never have been allowed in our country. In 2017, President Trump fought to end this program following the devastating NYC truck ramming by an ISIS terrorist who entered under the DV-1 program and murdered 8 people. At President Trump's direction, I am immediately directing USCIS to pause the DV-1 program to ensure no more Americans are harmed by this disastrous program. So again, that's from the Homeland Security Director there, Kristi Noem, reacting into all of this, saying they're going to end a program on immigration there. Blaming kind of the fact that he was an illegal immigrant, of course, killing the MIT professor, you saw a picture of in that package, as well as 2 students and injuring 9 others in Brown University. So it's definitely going to be a story that we are going to continue to follow. I do want to continue diving into some of those top headlines that we are still following. Moving on to the next one here, the TikTok parent company ByteDance has signed a deal for a joint venture. We have a story on this. I want to take a look at it for you. It's quite interesting what TikTok's doing here. Of course, I believe yesterday was the new deadline in all of this, that they would have been banned again. Because if you remember, President Trump had kind of consistently been signing these executive orders to extend the ban here. I'm sorry, I'm just getting this ready for just a moment, and then we will have it to play it out on your screen. Here is that story. This is from Reuters here. It reads, quote, TikTok's Chinese owner ByteDance on Thursday signed binding agreements to hand control of the short video app U.S. operations to a group of investors, including Oracle, in a big step toward avoiding U.S. ban and ending years of uncertainty. The deal is a milestone for the short video app used regularly by more than 170 million Americans. After years of battles that began in August 2020, when President Donald Trump first tried unsuccessfully to ban the app over U.S. national security concerns. So that's kind of this update from Reuters there on where the TikTok ban stands right now. I want to take you to some of the more headlines that we are continuing to follow. Today is the 30-day mark when we expect the Epstein files to be released after that bill was signed by President Donald Trump. When we get them, earlier today on Fox News, I believe it was Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche saying they will be released. It'll be hundreds of thousands of documents. We'll do our best to kind of delve through some of those, get them to you as soon as we are under the understanding and are able to bring them to you that they have been released. Plus, as you take a look live there at the White House, we expect to hear from President Donald Trump later at the White House, coming at 12 p.m. Central Time, of course. It's 11:24 here, so when that comes, we'll bring you there live. Unclear exactly what those remarks are going to be on. Plus, President Vladimir Putin is vowing no more wars if the West treats Russia with respect. Of course, the West, he's likely referring to the United States here. So we'll have to see what goes on there. Of course, we were just listening into Marco Rubio. I believe he was answering some questions about kind of what's next here in the Russia-Ukrainian war. Let's go back out there live where Marco Rubio is continuing to answer questions from the press.
Nothing has happened that requires us to notify Congress or get congressional approval or cross the threshold into war. We have very strong legal opinions. We have now briefed Capitol Hill 23 times, 23 briefings, bipartisan briefings on Capitol Hill. I have personally participated in 6 of those 23 at the highest levels of the committee, but then the full House and then the full Senate, which, by the way, are always interesting. Okay, get it. I've been there before, okay? So, I was part of this thing in the past as well. But you do this briefing, you answer all their questions, and then they go out and tell people, we heard nothing, we saw nothing, that we were pleased with. They already had their answer before they went in, but we do them anyways. And we continue to do them. Not to mention the individual calls I've had with leaders in Congress, and I'm not going to disclose what those are. So everybody over there knows what we're doing, they know why we're doing it, and we've kept Congress fully apprised, and we'll continue to do so. Yes?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The settlers' violence is rampant in the West Bank.
The what is, I'm sorry?
The settlers,
Yes,
the Israeli
okay, yeah.
settlers' violence in the West Bank is being escalating, is increasing. Also, Israel is building around 20 settlements unit. Doesn't this undermine your own effort in the peace process? And also, if I may, on Gaza, the humanitarian situation is dire. The babies have been frozen to death because of the weather. Tents have been flooded. Is this anything that the United States can do to alleviate the suffering of the civilians in Gaza?
Yeah. In the case of the West Bank, we have, and you've seen our embassy even has put out statements and comments about specific incidents there that we're concerned about, that we do think, create a point of strong friction in the broader effort. And our own embassy, and Ambassador Huckabee has spoken to this as recently as a couple weeks ago, very firmly, I believe. And so we'll continue to communicate that as we have and make our opinion known in regards to its impact on the broader challenges. In the case of humanitarian, absolutely. I mean, this is the reason why that group is set up there every single day. We've been successful at opening new corridors. We want to continue to see that increase. We want to continue to see the flow of aid increase into those parts of Gaza that are still under Hamas control. But it also goes back, not to sound like a broken record, to why it is so critical to have the border peace put in place and the Palestinian technocratic group put in place. Because that allows us now, when you have this technocratic Palestinian group in place and a stabilization force to provide security, it now allows us to have someone we can work with to turn over the humanitarian aid to and have them be the ones that help distribute it along with these international partners. That's what the point we're trying to get to, that we can get to a point where that is, and part of the thing with humanitarian aid is also security. Someone has to provide security for these convoys as they go in, because oftentimes they have been attacked, they've been looted, they've been so forth. We don't have a force that can do that right now unless the Israelis are going to go in, and that would violate the ceasefire. But if we have a stabilization force on the ground, they could provide security. And then the technical side of it, the logistical side of it, along with the international partners, is what the Palestinian Technocratic Organization can do. That is why we are in such a hurry to finalize that phase of this deal so that the aid can flow. And not just aid, then we can move from aid to reconstruction, which is the goal everybody has. You want to reach a point in which you're not providing aid because Gaza has an economy, and it's not an economy controlled by Hamas. But we can't get to that stage until we can secure the place. And that's why we're in such a hurry to finalize that phase of the deal. Yes, sir.
Vladimir Putin today had
I
his
thought you
own-
were introducing yourself.
No, no.
I'm Vladimir
Definitely
Putin.
not. Definitely not. Vladimir
So what are you
Putin-
doing here? Go ahead,
Nick
I'm
Schiffer
sorry.
in PBS NewsHour. Vladimir Putin had his own end-of-year press
Today?
conference today.
Oh,
yeah.
he's trying to step on my message.
Yeah, yeah. His went, I think, 4 hours, so we got,
well,
we
don't
got at
worry
least
about
3
that
hours.
then.
And he said he was willing to end the war in
I
Ukraine.
bet you he didn't do it in Spanish.
He did not.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. He said he was willing to end the war in Ukraine based on principles he had outlined last summer, and that included a complete Ukrainian withdrawal from 4 regions, most of which are not occupied by Russia, recognition of occupied Russian territory in Ukraine, and the complete lifting of sanctions. That goes beyond some of the recent conversations you've been having. So do you think Putin is serious about peace, and is the U.S. willing to recognize occupied Russian territory in Ukraine?
Look, I think ultimately there is what people say, and I'm not claiming that that's not his position. I'm just saying there's what people say and then what people do. In the end, we're not going to base our approach to finding peace here on the basis simply of what people are saying. We're going to base it on what people are willing to agree to, what countries are willing to agree to. Our role is very simple. We try to understand what the Russian position, how much can they give and what do they have to have. We understand the Ukrainian position, and we try to find whether those two things can overlap. Maybe that happens this week. Maybe that happens next month. Maybe that's not ready for a few months. That's not up to us. That's up to the two sides. In the end, it's up to them to make a deal. We can't force Ukraine to make a deal. We can't force Russia to make a deal. They have to want to make a deal. The role we're trying to play is a role of figuring out whether there's any overlap here that they can agree to. And that's what we've invested a lot of time and energy and continue to do so. That may not be possible. I hope it is. I hope it can get done this month before the end of the year. I want it to end as soon as possible. I know the president is deeply committed to helping it end. I know this, though, we're the only ones that can do it. If we were not involved, no one would be talking to both sides. The UN can't do it. Who else is going to do it? Nobody in Europe can do it. So I think I think the one thing people should have is an expression of gratitude that President Trump is willing to continue to engage in this despite the fact that we haven't yet gotten the outcome that he hopes to have, because no one else could do it. And so that's what we're trying to do here. So this whole narrative that we're trying to force something on Ukraine is silly. We can't there's no peace deal that Ukraine, there is no peace deal unless Ukraine agrees to it. But there's also no peace deal unless Russia agrees to it. We are just trying to find whether there's common ground that we can make happen. And maybe that's not possible. Maybe it is. Maybe that's not possible right now. But we don't think our work could potentially serve as a baseline for that in the future. Maybe it is possible now. We're going to continue to test it and see where we can get to.
Is the U.S. willing to recognize occupied territory?
I'm not going to speak on any specifics of any deal because we're not going to be able to negotiate a peace deal, especially one like this, in the media. Suffice it to say, let me just put it to you this way. There can't be a peace deal unless Ukraine agrees to it. And there can't be a peace deal, of course, unless Russia agrees to it. But remember that. Any peace deal is one that Ukraine has to agree to because they're a combatant. If Ukraine says we don't agree to it, there won't be peace. So our job is not to force anything on anyone. It is to try to figure out if we can nudge both sides to a common place. And guys, in a conflict like this, in a war like this, that's not easy. It takes a lot of time. We're going to have some patience with it, unfortunately. It's already gone longer. But understand why the president cares about this. Okay? Because let's be honest here, and I'm not trying to diminish this, okay? Because it's an interesting position to be in. The United States only we don't provide weapons to Russia, we only provide weapons to Ukraine. The United States doesn't sanction Ukraine, it's only sanctioned Russia. And yet we are still the only country in the world that can talk to both sides. So let's be clear about the role we've played in this so far. I mean, we're the only ones that can. So I don't mean to be dismissive of why this matters or it's important, because this is going on in another continent. We've got issues in our own hemisphere we need to be dealing with. That if you were to ask prioritization, I would argue that something in our hemisphere from our national interest is more important than something in another continent. But it doesn't make Ukraine and Russia unimportant. We care about it. That's why we're involved in it. But by the same token, why does the president care? I'll tell you why. This week, 9,000 people will die, including like 5,000 or 6,000 weekly Russian casualties, okay, in a war. This is a bloody, nasty conflict. In the same time, the entire electric grid, the entire infrastructure of Ukraine is being destroyed almost as fast as it's being rebuilt. Every week that goes by, the cost of rebuilding that country gets exponentially higher. It is now becoming generational reconstruction. This is a very damaging war that's going to have incredible implications. There are now hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, probably maybe in millions, who have not lived in Ukraine in years. They've been displaced to other countries. The implications of this long-term for Ukraine are dramatic, and for Russia too, but for Ukraine, if we're focused on them. This is why the president wants to end it. He thinks it's a bloody, nasty, horrifying war, and he doesn't like wars. He really doesn't like wars. He thinks they're a waste of money, time, and talent. And he wants this one to end. And we're doing everything we can to end it. And it may or may not be possible, but we're certainly going to keep trying. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I promise you we're going to go through here. Do you have a deadline or something? I know, but let me get to the roads, because if I break up the road thing, you're going to screw up the whole plan I have for today. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Secretary. If I can turn internally for a moment, a recent survey by the American Foreign Service Association found strikingly low morale among career diplomats in the U.S., some of whom reported that they feel like they can't freely express their opinions, that their candidate input is not welcome, and many of them are saying that they're actually thinking about career changes. I know you talked at the top about how change can be disruptive, but I wonder, how much does this concern you? Do you possibly see this as a feature, not a bug, or would you be happy to see people leave so that you can bring in a new crop of people? And then just briefly on your own role, you have 2 jobs right now. Your travel schedule seems a bit lighter than your recent predecessors. You didn't attend the last NATO foreign ministers gathering and had your deputy go. Are you fully performing the job of Secretary of State? Are you more of a national security advisor than a Secretary of State? Can you talk about that?
Well, first of all, on the travel schedule, we have a lot of leaders keep coming here, too. So you talk about NATO, great example on NATO. I already went to a NATO meeting this year of all the foreign ministers. Then I went to the leaders meeting, which not all the foreign ministers were at. And then on top of that, that week is the week we had Rwanda and the DRC coming to the United States on a deal that I was working in. So as far as the travel schedule is concerned, we have a lot of leaders constantly coming here. We have leader meetings every single week for the most part up until last week. So there's a lot of work to be done. On the Foreign Service, we have very talented people here. I saw that report somewhere. That's from the union. It's from a union survey. All I can tell you is that today Foreign Service officers are more empowered at the regional bureau than they've ever been. I get descent cables. I get cables every day from all over the world that provide the baseline for a lot of the ideas that we pursue. There isn't a week that goes by that I don't send back 2 or 3 cables with notes about, let's turn this into a policy proposal. We are changing this place so that it is our missions in the field that are not just driving directives from the top down, but also ideas from the bottom up. And I'm very proud of that, and I think that's going to lead and pay huge dividends for future secretaries of state long after I'm gone. So, yes, sir.
Thank you, Secretary. Human rights organizations report that 2025 has seen the highest number of executions in the Islamic Republic of Iran in over 2 decades. What specific new measures is the State Department taking to ensure that human rights abuses, specifically this surge of state-sanctioned execution, do not become a secondary priority in your dealings with Tehran?
Well, ultimately, look, we have very deep systemic disagreements with the regime in Iran. And it's part of one of, if not the most sanctioned country in the world, one of the most sanctioned countries in the world. There isn't a week that goes by, or at least 2-3 times a month, I'm authorizing some new sanction on some new entity related to Iran. I don't think anyone could argue that this administration has been friendly towards them. So we continue to feature these things because it tells us about who they are. In the case of some of these executions that you're talking about, some of them, by the way, were in the aftermath of the war with Israel, where they went through and have jailed people and accused people of being informants and spies and things of that nature. But we're under no illusion, and every year we put out a report that outlines this, and we've been pretty consistent in our messaging. Our problem with the Iranian regime isn't simply, obviously it's predominantly their desire to acquire nuclear weapons, their sponsorship of terrorism, but it's ultimately the treatment of their own people. I said it in my hearing a year ago in the Senate, I say it now, I know of no nation on earth where there is such a difference between a regime that governs the country and the people who live there every single day. That regime is not reflective of the people who live in Iran, who are the inheritors of a proud and long cultural legacy and a proud history. And then you've got a clerical radical regime that has driven and taken the wealth of that country and used it, not to enrich secure their people and their future, not to make sure they have enough water and electricity. They've used their money to sponsor terrorist organizations all over the world. That's what they've used their money for. So we're going to continue to consistently point that out.
Secretary,
second question. I'm sorry, I got to go because I'm getting everybody today.
Regarding Europe, you said that Europe was not going to be able to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. There's been some disengagement. There's some push within the European Union to either not comply with the increase in defense spending that the United States has been promoting, or also some European countries like Spain promoting closer ties to China, or going to China, or inviting more investment from China, or even Chinese technology in critical infrastructure. Are you concerned at all about this path?
No, the countries made a commitment in NATO at a meeting I was at, where they made the 5% pledge, which is a dramatic and historic pledge, with the exception of Spain, of course, who didn't make that pledge. And we've had no indication from any of the countries that agreed to that they're not going to do it, because it's in their own interest. It's in their own interest. The bottom line is, increasing their defense capacity is in their interest because it's their defense. As far as opening up to China, look, one of the biggest problems Europe faces is they're being flooded with cheap Chinese goods, including Chinese cars. They're being flooded. Their own industrial base is under attack by unfair Chinese practices economically. So, I don't know about the rhetoric you're pointing to or the examples, but that's a threat that Europe faces, and they need a rebalancing as well. They're also, like we are, experiencing disruptions to supply chains and things at the economic realm that are very problematic and dangerous for national security. So we would expect them to act at their national interests, both continentally and individually as their own countries. All right, we got to speed it up. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Annalise Nielsen from Sky News Australia. In your national security strategy, you've warned Europe about civilizational erasure. When you've been watching what's been happening in Australia with the rise of anti-Semitism and our government's response to the Bondi massacre, Our Prime Minister's dodged direct questions on Islamic extremism, but then unprompted evoked right-wing extremism as a threat. Do you have any message to Australia about civilizational erasure, and why is America watching?
Look, I just think it's very simple, and that is that any mass migration is highly disruptive to any country. We talked about it here in the United States. When you experience mass migration, I don't talk about immigration, I'm talking about mass migration. Okay, mass migration is a negative thing. It's not positive. And it's very difficult for any society to absorb and assume hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people over a short period of time, especially if they come from halfway around the world. There are cultural and assimilations issues related to that, et cetera. And so these are concerns that it's concerns I have about our own country primarily. It's been a priority of this administration to address this. But I think it's a growing concern in Europe. I mean, there are other voices in Europe and obviously in Australia as well that have expressed concern about this. These are facts. This doesn't make you anti-anybody. What it makes is you do have, as a sovereign country, the right to control how many people you absorb, how many people you allow in, and who those people are. This is a very basic sovereign right. Okay, it doesn't mean you don't allow any people in. There are people coming into this country every day to visit, to work, to live permanently, but you have to know who they are, and you have to have some limits and controls over what those numbers are. And obviously, because of some of the things we've seen, mass migration over the last decade has been highly disruptive, not just to the United States, but also to continental Europe, and in some cases in the Indo-Pacific as well. So I just think this is a real challenge that multiple Western advanced industrialized countries are facing, and I think it's pronounced in parts of Europe as well, and obviously, at least on the basis of your question, appear to be a challenge as well in Australia. All right, to the next row. Yes, ma'am. Are you not? Hold on, Andrea, right behind you. I'm going to get to everybody. Go. Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to ask.
You don't have a question? Okay, no, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
On Ukraine this weekend, the meetings with the Ukrainian delegation and the U.S. delegation, are you planning to participate
It's
in
in
those
Miami.
meetings?
They're starting today and tomorrow. I may be there tomorrow for a portion of it. There's another one happening today, but that one is with the Turks and the Qataris and the UAE on the Gaza plan. So if I'm not there, because I have things we have to do here today, like talk to you guys, I think tomorrow, since that, it's in Miami as well. So, yeah, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Timothy Inrozzi with the Washington Examiner. Going back to the previous question about Europe, and I believe the Sky News reporter referenced civilizational erasure, which is a term that has been used by both the White House and the State Department. Both the White House and the State Department have made kind of recurring overtures to Europe as a civilization that is in some sort of danger and that should join with the United States as a sort of Western civilizational bloc. And it seems to be a recurring priority. However, with the release of the National Security Strategy, many European leaders, leader of Germany, members of the EU, of the European Parliament, have found it totally unacceptable or offensive or question the allyship of the United States with the rhetoric that was used. So I just wonder if the United States is correct in that these policies, like mass migration, will lead to civilizational erasure. Is it possible to save European civilization if the governments simply don't want to be saved?
How has this alliance long been described? As the Western alliance, right? What is it? And it's not just me saying, you go to these NATO meetings and meet with people, what they will tell you is our shared history, our shared legacy, our shared values, our shared priorities. That's what they talk about as the reason for this alliance. Well, if you erase your shared history, your shared culture, your shared ideology, your shared priorities, your shared principles, then you just have a straight up defense agreement. That's all you have. So what I'm trying to point to, and what we've tried to point to, is very simple. That is, at the bedrock and at the cornerstone of our relationship, with example with Europe, is the fact that we do have a shared culture, a shared civilization, a shared experience, and shared values and principles on things like human rights, on freedom, on liberty, on democracy, on all sorts of on the rights of the individual, on all these sorts of things that we in this nation are the inheritors of in many cases, because many of these ideas that led to the founding of our country found their genesis in some of these places in the Western Alliance. If you take that away, if that's wiped out because for whatever reason it's no longer a priority, I do think it puts a strain and threatens the alliance in the long term and in the big picture. Now, whatever internal politics causes people to dispute this, I'm not going to comment on, other than to tell you that I do think that at the core of these special relationships we have is the fact that we have shared history, shared values, shared civilizational principles that we should be unapologetic about. This is a nation that was founded on Western principles. Founded on Western principles like liberty, the value of and the right of the individual, the right of self-governance. These are all Western values. Now, others may have adopted it in different parts of the world, but they emanate from Western history. And it's something that we should be unapologetic about. Why would we be apologetic about it? Anyone who doesn't recognize, for example, that many of the features of our system of government find their root in Roman and Greek history is a fool. Is a fool. It's just not true. And so I think that we need to understand and embrace that, not negate it. And I think that's what we're pointing to here, is that we are concerned that particularly in parts of Western Europe, those things that underpin our alliance and our tie to them could be under threat in the long term. And by the way, there are leaders in those countries that recognize that as well. Some say it openly, some say it privately. In the eastern and southern part of Europe, they're much more open about it. Nonetheless, it is a factor that needs to be addressed. Yes, ma'am.
Was it the New York Post? So you said earlier that you don't see a surrender happening anytime soon when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. Putin says he will accept nothing less than an unconditional surrender, but if this latest intensive push for peace talks fails, is there anything that the U.S. can do to make Russia want to end its war? And then secondly, some of the most major foreign policy issues from Venezuela, Iran, Ukraine, Israel, have been assigned special envoys who do not report directly to the State Department, which obviously has a larger view of how these conflicts affect each other. How intimately has State been involved with these envoys' strategies and actions this year? And do you see State taking a larger role in these kind of day-to-day negotiations?
I disagree with the premise of your question. I mean, every envoy that's been involved in all these critical issues, I personally work with very closely. I talk to them 4 or 5 times a day, or meet with them, or they're in the White House, or they're here, primarily in the White House, or they're involved in the same meetings we're involved in. I mean, that's just not factual. No one is out there doing independent action. All of it is strongly coordinated. It's one of the benefits of also being the National Security Advisor, is it allows us to also organize the interagency. Every single one of these envoys, I speak about Steve Woodcock in particular, who's a phenomenal person, very smart, very talented, who dedicates, he doesn't get paid to do this job, he does it for free. And he invests a tremendous amount of time, full time on this thing, traveling all over the world, doing all kinds of things. Okay, but Steve doesn't do anything independently. He relies on the interagency. He gets support from Treasury, sometimes from Commerce, certainly from the Department of War, and from the State Department. In fact, he's staffed in many of these visits by State Department folks, and including the ones in Miami, especially as we get to the technical parts of these agreements. So the synergy there is very tight across the board. And so I think that's just not factual.
I was referring to Envoy Grinnell with Venezuela and some of those conflicts earlier this year that really kind of weren't helpful in getting towards the release of the prisoners.
Yeah, look, everything that's been done in this administration has been coordinated in some form or fashion. I mean, you guys don't see it all because I know everybody wants foreign policy to be 100% transparent, but sometimes it really can't be, because there are sensitivities, because there are diplomatic sensitivities, because things people are willing to agree to in private that they may not be willing to do so in public. There's all kinds of things that have to happen in order to achieve outcomes. Sometimes they work, sometimes certain approaches work, sometimes they don't. But that's not new to this administration. That's been true throughout history. And but at the end of the day, I mean, I feel like we have a very good team of people that work very closely together on all of this. And the key is every single one of these conflicts, every single one of these issues are all multidisciplinary. Okay? There is no such thing as any one of these things that we're dealing with. Again, going back to the case, let's just use Ukraine as an example. In the case of Ukraine, it involved Treasury with regards to the minerals deal. It involves Commerce to some extent. It most certainly involves the Department of War in terms of not just battlefield assessments, but the sale of weaponry through Pearl, et cetera. It involves the Department of State in terms of everything from interpreters to the technical work of actually putting words to paper that would make sense in an agreement and supporting these visits. We had a very important meeting in Geneva, hosted at our embassy, supported by diplomatic personnel that were involved in doing that, and a lot of the follow-up as well that has to happen with some of these things. You know, peace deals aren't just, in the case of Gaza, strongly supported. We took our ambassador in Yemen, who can't be in Yemen, Fagan, and assigned him for 8 weeks on that portfolio so that we could have someone there to help navigate and coordinate all of the technical aspects. You can reach a peace agreement in concept, but then someone's got to sit down and write down the technical language and the specificity, and they rely on the professionals in this department and other government agencies, depending on the subject matter. So, look, I think in any new administration, there's a learning curve early on. People are still getting onboarded. You may not even have people Senate confirmed yet in these positions. Maybe you haven't even hired some unfilled spots. But I think certainly in the second half of last year, I'm very proud and very pleased at the synergy that we've established on all of these things and that continue to establish it. Another one that's doing a great job is Mossad Boulos. I mean, he's out there every day working with our Africa Bureau, They're very involved in this, on trying to deal with Sudan, on trying to deal with the Rwanda DRC. So we have a good team of people that work very well together and very collaboratively, and we're going to build on that in the new year. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Shelby Talcott with Semaphore. Vanity Fair quoted you as wondering whether Putin just wants the entirety of Ukraine. I'm curious if that's still a question for you, and how confident are you in being able to reach a peace agreement if that is a question? And then along those lines, is there a deadline for Russia and Ukraine to come to an agreement before this administration walks away?
Yeah, I'm not in any position to give you deadlines on anything. And as far as that quote, that's a quote the president has said publicly, which is, he has said 3 things. I thought it was going to be the easiest one, and it's turned out to be the hardest. I don't know if Putin wants to do a deal or if Putin wants to take the whole country. These are things he has said openly. And, you know, I think that's, I don't even remember when I talked to the guy from that magazine, but, you know, for much of the early part of this year, one of the things we were trying to deduce is exactly what is it that Russia wants to achieve. We know what they wanted to achieve initially when the war began. They haven't achieved those objectives. There's a new set of objectives now. I mean, part of reaching an agreement is trying to understand, I've already said this, what both sides want or need and what they're willing to give. And so I think that was a question that many in the administration had early on, is defining what the Russian position, what exactly do they really, not what they say they publicly want, but what they publicly want and privately want are the same thing. That's part of the, and the same is true on the Ukrainian side, by the way. What could they actually live with? What's acceptable? What's not acceptable? What are their red lines? That's how you put a deal together. You have to sort of figure out if the two sides overlap at some point. Sometimes some deals are just not ready. Sometimes the timing is perfect. You have to put it together. If you look at what happened with Gaza, that looked intractable. And then a series of events occurred that made it possible. For example, the strike inside of Qatar that the Israelis took at the time, you know, was a sort of a dramatic thing, but in some ways it sort of set in motion a sense of urgency to bring this thing to an end before it spread. So sometimes you just have to be ready for a change in circumstances or conditions that allow progress to be made. But these things are hard to do. They take a lot of time. Sometimes it takes some patience. It's just unfortunate that you know that every day that goes by, more people are died and more people die and more things are destroyed. Yes, sir.
To come back to your comments earlier on Sudan. You mentioned this concern about transshipment and weapons coming from overseas to Sudan. Could you sort of put a slightly finer point on it? Have you raised this with the UAE in your meetings that they need to stop providing support to the RSF? And have you got any commitment or any kind of
look, none of these, neither side has their own factories for the most part, right? All these weapons are acquired from abroad. They have to come from somewhere else, and they have to come through somewhere else. So someone is allowing it to be shipped in, and someone is actually shipping it. So we've had the right and appropriate conversations with all sides of this conflict, because that is their leverage. Without their support, neither side can continue. So that's why we need to engage, and that's why we've engaged the parties involved in all of this. I don't want to find myself here in a position of picking on anybody other than to say that we think and we're hopeful that we can make some progress on this, but we know that in order to make progress on this, it will require outside actors to use their leverage and their pressure to make that come about, particularly this humanitarian truce, which is the first thing we want to achieve. We think that outside actors have the leverage and the influence over the players on the ground to bring about this humanitarian truce. And we are very focused on it. I had conversation on it yesterday. We have spoken to the UAE, we've spoken to Saudi, we've spoken to Egypt, and this is not new. We've been talking to them. We signed a document with them in September at the UN gatherings. We had previous meetings with them before that. So this is not a new engagement. It's just one that's had a higher sense of urgency given recent events there. But yeah, we're involved every single day trying to work through this, because we do understand that, and this is not new to this conflict. It is in many ways similar to what happened to Haven in Gaza. What brought Hamas to the table, among other things, was the fact that some of the countries that had relationships with Hamas, like Qatar, like Turkey, played a very constructive role in bringing them to the table and pressuring them to sign an agreement. And we played a similar role on the other side. So, you know, it's not unusual that you would involve outside actors in using leverage to bring parties to the table to agree on something. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. On Venezuela, what is the U.S. willing to commit if Maduro is ousted from power to ensure that the country doesn't plunge further into instability in sort of a power
I don't have any
vacuum?
announcements on that right
and
now.
And do you see Maria Corina Machado and Edmundo Gonzalez as the heir apparents for power?
Well, we don't believe Maduro's not legit. We've been pretty clear. We didn't recognize him as a legitimate president. The previous administration didn't as well. The first Trump administration didn't either. He's not the legitimately elected president. They had an election last year that was stolen, and everyone knows it. Even all the countries in the region know it. And but you know, I don't really have anything to add other than what I've said today with regards to Venezuela.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for doing this. According to a poll by the Reagan Institute, 62% of all Americans support the use of military force against suspected drug traffickers in the Caribbean. And among MAGA Republicans, 90% support the military use against suspected drug traffickers in the Caribbean. So how does the State Department view or analyze these figures?
Yeah, I mean, we don't do foreign policy by poll, and our job is to carry out the directives of the president. The president was elected. Donald J. Trump was elected the President of the United States, and he promised that if elected, he would go after drug cartels, and that's what he's doing. He is keeping a promise he made to the American people upon which they elected him to be president. He told them he would protect this country, and that's what he's doing, and he told them he would go after drug cartels, and that's what he's doing. So it doesn't surprise me if that poll is accurate, because the president's simply living up to the promises that he made when he ran for office. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Secretary, on Gaza, you've said repeatedly in this room now that this is a process, that phase 2 could take next 2 to 3 years. Is there a possibility
To fully implement.
To fully
I mean,
implement.
you can't build buildings in one day. Right?
Is there a possibility in your mind that the status quo, more or less as we see it now, with this sort of insufficient flow of aid, periodic violations of the ceasefire by each side, a lack of reconstruction, and of course the absence of an international security force, that this could potentially continue more or less through the rest of the president's term? And if not, I'm not asking for a date, but I think we'd all like to know. We've heard from the president and yourself that there are all these countries that want to join the international security force. When will they deploy? Are we talking in the next year, in the next couple of years? And is there a certain amount of time that could pass at which point the administration, without an ISF, at which point the administration would green light or will green light Israel to resume its war?
The way to answer that question is this way. No one is arguing that the status quo is sustainable in the long term nor desirable. And that's why we have a sense of urgency about bringing phase 1 to its full completion, which is the establishment of the Board of Peace and the Palestinian Technocratic Authority or organization that's going to be on the ground. And then the stabilization force comes closely thereafter. Once we've established that, we have a lot of confidence that we are going to have the donors for the reconstruction effort and for all the humanitarian support in the long-term building of phases 2 and phases 3. We just don't think that we're going to get to phase 2 or phase 3. We don't believe that we can have a successful donor conference, just as a real example, until people know they want to know who's in charge, and they want to know that there's security. Okay, they want to make sure that who's going to pledge billions of dollars to build things that are going to get blown up again because a war starts. So they want to know who's in charge, and they want to know that there's security, and that there'll be long-term stability. So no one would argue that what we have in place now is sustainable in the long term. We have to get to the completion of phase 1. I am confident we will, within the time frame necessary to make it successful. It's just not today, but hopefully very, very soon. We've made real progress. We made progress as late as yesterday in additional names for this Palestinian organization that's going to be the technocratic organization. So I think we're very close. I think we're going to get there. I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to get through phase 1. And then what I meant about taking years for phase 2 or phase 3 is not years to start it. I'm just being, to rebuild a place, to put buildings and rebuild an economy, that takes time. You'll have the donors, but you still have to have the equipment. You got to build. You have to do all that sort of thing. This is a long-term project. Phase 1 is not a long-term project. It has to happen. I'm confident it'll happen within a time frame that makes it successful. We're very committed to it, and so is everybody else. Everybody else in the region understands that there is no plan B. If this doesn't work, plan B or what's going to happen is a new war, and no one wants that. No one wants that.
So, Mr. Secretary, are you going to be able to tell us in the next year who is going to secure Gaza and
it'll have to happen
who is
much.
going
You're
to
talking about the
disarm?
stabilization force?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that'll have to happen much more than a year from now. That is the completion of phase 1 when we get through the establishment of the stabilization force, Board of Peace, Palestinian group, stabilization force. All those things happen, boom, 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 1, 2, 3. They have to happen very quickly, not a year from now. This is something we're aiming at very soon. It has to. It's what we're focused on right now, like a laser. All right, yes, sir.
Secretary, thanks for all the time, and
It's not going to be 4 hours, I promise. It's an hour and a half.
you see the press corps is hungry for engagement here. I hope the State Department will return to regular press briefings soon. You got a great spokesperson's unit over there that's more than capable of handling it. A couple quick questions. The President directed you through executive order to explore sanctions of sectors and chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood. Qatar is ground zero for the Muslim Brotherhood. This administration obviously has a very close relationship with the Qataris. How do you confront the Muslim Brotherhood without confronting the Qataris? That's my first question. Second question is on UNRWA. There's a report that the State Department is in deep discussions about possibly sanctioning UNRWA. What's your mindset on that, and do you feel there is any role for UNRWA absent humanitarian aid delivery in the future?
I think we can deliver humanitarian aid without UNRWA. I think UNRWA is a corrupted organization that's unsalvageable, period. And I think our policies reflect that. On the first point that you talked about, I think we'll have some announcements, and not today, early next week, on Muslim Brotherhood. Designating groups there's a series of internal steps, despite what people may or may not perceive. There are things we have to meet, criteria we have to meet, information we have to have, boxes we have to check, legal reviews that have to happen, and that takes time. So, but I think there'll be announcements very soon on that, probably as early, if not today, early this next week.
Do you expect pushback from the Qataris?
Well, I'm not going to comment on which segments of the Muslim Brotherhood. As you know, there are different chapters, for lack of a better term, and individuals spread throughout the world. But the President's issued his executive order, and we're working through the execution of it. And we'll get to what we need to get to. A lot of this obviously depends, from a legal review standpoint. You have to have certain information that you can cite in order to justify the designation. So we're working through that. We'll have some announcements next week, and they won't be the last announcements that we have. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, thank you for doing this today. This conversation between my colleagues and yourself paints a seemingly chaotic and hostile world at times. So very simply and generally put, what do you believe is the biggest threat facing the United States today?
I don't know we live in a world where we have a single threat that we can identify. I think there are multiple things that you look, both short-term and long-term. As I pointed to in the hemisphere, in our own hemisphere, closest to home geographically, it's the growing, the rise of and the power of transnational criminal terrorist group who are destabilizing nation states throughout the region and pose a direct threat to the United States through overthrowing governments, destabilizing these governments, leading to mass migration and certainly the trafficking of drugs, and also providing fertile ground for potential, outside of hemisphere actors to act within our hemisphere in the long term. That's a major threat. I think we face some challenges. And then we know the United States industrial base, the United States supply chains become dangerously dependent on other countries for many of the things that are elemental and critical to our, not just sustaining what we have, but building the economy of the 21st century. And so building up our industrial base and diversifying our supply chains are a critical threat that the United States needs to confront. I think related to that, not directly related to the Department of State, but somewhat related to the United States, is building up our defense industrial base as well. One of the challenges that we face, and so does much of the world, in the West, is the ability to build weaponry at a scale and scope necessary, not just to deal with the threats of today, but to innovate and develop those tomorrow. It simply just takes too long to build up defense articles, get them to market in a timely fashion. And not only do we complain about that, but we have allies who want to buy things from us that we just haven't been able to produce fast enough. And so the President's made that a priority to confront. I think beyond that, I think you would argue that in the big picture, long term, we have to understand that the United States has interests in every part of the world that are related to these two threats. In the case of Africa, we see countries that have extraordinary opportunity to develop economically, the youngest population in the world, and the United States wants to have relationships, both commercial and personal, with many of these nations as they emerge in their own right into an era of prosperity. We want to be there to help assist in that if possible. We want to make sure that American interests are taken into account. Unfortunately, there are many countries around the world that in the past have had to rely on predatory practices of other countries to receive stability, to receive funds necessary to build infrastructure or what have you. We want to make sure that American businesses are at the table offering alternatives, be it in telecommunication, be it in artificial intelligence and technology, be it in basic infrastructure. So there's a lot of things to uncover and unpack, and I think in the long term as well. And I think our national security strategy reflects a lot of this. So I wish we lived in a world where we had one major threat. Many of these are interrelated. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I was going to ask my questions in Calibri, but since you do not
Wow.
communicate that
I
in that
speak Times New
anymore,
Roman,
I
so-
am. I'm going to ask in Times New Roman instead. Sorry about the Dolphins.
That's all right.
I know that you don't want to predict anything, but whether you're at these meetings in Miami, obviously not today, but maybe tomorrow, do you think that there's any chance of having some kind of announceable progress before New Year? In other words, are we going to be working on New Year's Eve on a?
We might be, if it's necessary and productive. You know, we're going to work as long as it takes.
Okay.
And by the way, these are the meetings you know about, but there's talks going on every single day. There was a meeting earlier this week in Berlin. There's phone calls every day. There's phone calls every day, be it with my counterparts that are national security advisors, or my counterparts that are foreign ministers, or what Steve is engaged in, or what Jared's been engaged in, or what even at the diplomatic level, some of, you know, there are days where it's Matt Whitaker, over our ambassador to NATO, that's involved in a conversation, or one of our ambassadors, ones in the nation states that are relaying back a conversation or involved in one. So there's work happening every day, all the time, probably around the clock. Not just on Ukraine, but on all these other things.
Okay. And then
So,
just
but these are the meetings you know about, and everybody kind of focuses on them as big events, but there's work happening all the time that lead up to those meetings and follow those meetings. As far as predicting a timeline, look, I'm not going to do that. This is a difficult task. It's an important one. We're focused on it. We want to get there as soon as possible.
Okay, so, and then, obviously Gaza and Ukraine are still works in progress, but of the peace agreements that have been reached so far, 2 of them are in obvious trouble, right? You know, obviously which ones they are: Cambodia, Thailand, DRC, Rwanda. In retrospect, and I know that work is being done to try and resuscitate these, but in retrospect, do you think that the administration, the president, but also others, declared victory on these
No, they
too
were.
early?
I mean, this fighting, for example, with Thailand and Cambodia did stop. Both sides have made commitments in writing that they signed. Those commitments today are not being kept as a result of both sides claim grievances against one another. And so the work now is to bring them back to the table. The ASEAN ministers will be meeting on Monday. I had a call yesterday with my Thai counterpart and intend to do the same. And we've been involved, the president, in conversations this weekend. And our hope is between now and Monday to work to bring everybody back to compliance with the agreements that were made. In the case of the DRC and Rwanda, we have signed commitments from both sides. Those commitments are not being met. But at least we have the signed commitments. We now can hold people to something, and we can push them. And in that case, by the way, for example, in the case of Rwanda DRC, as a good example, not only have we been engaged, but we have asked our friends on the Hill, both Republicans and Democrats, to also engage in conversations of their own with these leaders so they understand this is a bipartisan, you know, multi-branch of government interest in this topic. But the good news about both of those is we have signed agreements. At least we have something we can push them towards compliance on. But as I said, in many of these cases with peace, you sign a peace deal, there's compliance, something happens, they fall out of compliance, you got to bring them back, you got to try to push. But at least instead of negotiating something new, you're simply trying to now push people back to compliance with what they already agreed on. So I think these were achievements. In the case of Cambodia and Thailand, it actually did stop fighting. It has now restarted, and we are working hard to push everybody back to compliance. And we are cautiously optimistic that we can get there by Monday or Tuesday of next week. We're hopeful. But there's more work to be done to that point. All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, you've said, including here today, that Maduro doesn't honor deals. How can the U.S. achieve the goal that you're describing of stopping the drug traffickers and the terrorists without Maduro leaving, number one? And number two, a topic that hasn't been asked about yet, State Department officials have recently met with visiting AFD officials from Germany, and we're hearing from AFD members as well as analysts who see the national security strategy as an effort by the administration to endorse the AFD. Can you share anything about the views of your views or the views of the administration on the AFD in Germany?
Yeah, I mean, on the case of Venezuela, I mean, I've answered it repeatedly now. I can only tell you our national interest is ending the flow of drugs towards the United States and these terrorist activities that are occurring that include cooperation with these gangs. Beyond that, I'm not going to speculate on what leads us to that outcome, other than to say that we're very committed to reaching that outcome. We meet with a broad array of political actors in multiple countries all over the world. They come, they visit the United States. We want to know who they are. We want to meet with them. We want to hear them out. As I told you, we have a president who generally does not view meeting anyone as a concession. So there are broad political actors. We've met with broad political actors from different parts of the Western Hemisphere as well, and broad political actors from different parts of the world. So I think it's important, and part of our job is to understand the full political spectrum of countries around the world, including countries we have alliances with. I would say that many of our allied countries, they meet with Democrats and Republicans. and sometimes libertarians or whoever. I mean, political figures that travel overseas, they also have meetings with them. So part of the job of the State Department is to inform the administration about sort of the internal political dynamics of the countries that we have alliances and partnerships with. Because in the end, we don't know what the outcomes of elections are, but understanding that the internal political climate of individual countries is a key part of determining how we approach and pursue public policy in partnership with them. And that's why, you know, we've had recent elections here in the Western Hemisphere, and we've met with multiple people that are running. Meeting with them does not mean we're endorsing them for president of Bolivia or president of Chile, but we do want to know who these people are and what they're about and what they're thinking, because it informs our work. And by the way, so, you know, we do that from the embassy as well. I mean, we get a lot of the cables I have is a meeting they met with someone who's going to run for president in 2 years. That doesn't mean we're endorsing the person, but we should probably know a little bit about them in case they win. And even if they don't win, if their party has votes in the parliament or votes in their legislative branch, that's an important factor to consider. Yes.
Thank you. Some key European and regional allies say they're limiting intelligence sharing with the United States because they're worried that the boat strikes violate international law and they don't want to be involved. Doesn't that strain these relations with key partners that you say you need in order to do these broader security efforts in the region?
No. No, it doesn't. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm not going to comment on intelligence matters. Look, every day I read stuff that's just not true. Every day. I'm not telling you guys are being, but you guys are being lied to sometimes. Like, sources will come to you and tell you things. Just because they have a government email doesn't mean they know what they're saying. Maybe they just want to sound important. Maybe they have other incentives. I'm not opining about your question in particular. I'm just writ large, but I'm not going to talk about intelligence matters. Suffice it to say that the United States, every boat strike we've conducted, okay? This is not people seeing a boat and say, okay, let the drummer get wicked and blow him up. We're not talking about that stuff. We are presenting every single one of these is justified. We know who's on those boats. We've been tracking them from the very beginning. We know everything about them, okay? There are boat strikes we don't take because they don't meet the criteria, the legal criteria. We have everything we need, and it's one of the reasons why you've seen this massive deployment in the region, is to be able to gather intelligence and paint a picture that we can justify to lawyers based on the law. So I'm very confident about that effort. It's been very successful.
Thank you, sir. Back to terrorist designations. Last month, the State Department designated 4 European groups aligned with Antifa as foreign terrorist organizations. Could we see more designations like that in the works for left-wing extremist groups, and what could the scope
I mean,
of
if
that
the
look
groups
like?
involved in firebombing, if there's anybody involved in, you know, activities such as that could potentially inspire or lead to violence in the United States, we're going to designate them. So sure, if you have any we want to suggest, I will look at them. Okay, here you go. I told you we'd get to you. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience. Mr. Secretary, I wanted to drill down on the way you and the administration see America's national interests, because you said that Ukraine is not on our continent, not our war. You said something in our own hemisphere is more important. So this involves both our commitment to the negotiations in Ukraine, which the President is passionately committed to for ending the rising numbers of deaths, he says. Russian President Putin told my colleague, Kier Simmons, today at the news conference in Moscow, "We do not consider ourselves responsible for the loss of life because it was not us who started this war." Does the administration, does the President, you, the administration, believe that Putin was not the aggressor here? And if so, how can you reach an agreement between two parties when the aggressor will not acknowledge that he invaded a sovereign country? If I just may follow. So how do you reach any kind of compromise or ceasefire when Vladimir Putin repeatedly says, and you say that may not be what he really believes, but he has never said that he would make concessions publicly. And he's never said that he invaded Ukraine. He's always said that that is Russian territory. So why is that not in our national interest? When also in our hemisphere, if it's impossible to eliminate the threat of narco-terrorism as you describe it, with Maduro in charge, you've described the extent beyond narco-terrorism and drug trafficking of his threat. You've described it today as a threat to the region. Doesn't that mean there will have to be regime change? And is it in America's national interest to get involved in regime change in our hemisphere, given what's happened before? And why is Maduro this overriding, I mean, he is an overriding threat by all acknowledgement, but why is the former president of Honduras not a regional threat, who was personally involved in, hundreds of tons?
All right. So let me take the second one for the first one. On the president of Honduras, I'm not involved in the pardon process, which is what that was. He's no longer in office. So that might be.
He was in a U.S. prison.
No, I understand, but I can't comment on our pardons process because that's not an area that I have many jobs, but that ain't one of them. So I'm not hiding from it. I'm just telling you I don't know. I can't give you an informed answer on that because I was just involved in that process. As far as the question of Maduro and his impediment, look, I've just made the observation that it's hard to make a deal with someone. Everybody says, everybody says we should go to negotiation. All I'm observing, I'm just saying all I'm observing is he's never kept any of the deals he's made in the past, which makes it difficult to consider making one in the future. Beyond that, I'm not going to speculate about what might or may not happen. Ultimately, I can tell you what our goals are and what our interests are, and that's how we've defined them.
Well, in 2019, didn't he get bailed out by Cuban military, Cuban intelligence, outside forces? And so ultimately, with this blockade, is this partly, yes, Maduro, but partly to get at Cuba and Iran and the recipients of this sanctioned oil?
This action on the boats, these are sanctioned, but these are enforcement actions. That's what they are. They are existing sanctions, and therefore 80% of their oil is shipped through ghost fleets. Okay, so we understand what we're talking about here. We are talking about boats that are basically privateers, okay, that are flying under false flags, that turn off the transponders, that spoof their true location. They are hired to evade sanctions. We are simply enforcing sanctions. Every one of these has a court order attached to it. We go to a judge, the judge issues the warrant, we're executing. These are enforcement actions. The fact that they happen to impact a terrorist regime, is a good thing, but they are enforcement actions, and we are conducting enforcement actions. On the case of Ukraine, no one has said that Ukraine is a zero in terms of our national interests. We have sold them billions of dollars worth of weaponry. We've provided them in previous billions of dollars worth of weaponry. We continue to provide them intelligence support. And we have sanctioned. The president has sanctioned the Russian Federation. He issued oil sanctions. All the oil sanctions everybody wanted him to do, he did them. He did them a month and a half ago. All I'm saying, now you point to all the stuff about, does Putin say this? Does Putin? That's why this issue set is difficult. I'm not claiming anything other than the fact that we understand it's difficult. We understand that you're not going to have a deal unless both sides have to give and both sides have to get. Both sides will have to make concessions if you're going to have a deal. You may not have a deal. We may not have a deal. It's unfortunate.
The U.S. should walk away from that if it
is
not a prime region interest because it's not in our continent.
That's not my decision to make. Ultimately, the president will make a determination if and when he feels like further U.S. engagement is no longer productive or serves the national interest. That's a decision the president have to make. I can't speculate about that. All right, yes.
Mr. Secretary, a question for you on Venezuela and then quickly on Ukraine. You mentioned Maduro was not the only one indicted by the United States in the Southern District. Does that mean it is U.S. policy that not just Maduro, but his top regime lieutenants, cabinet members, that they all must exit?
Yeah, no, I point to the indictment simply as when people say, well, how do we are alleging that he is, and I guess, you can describe it any way you want. I just want to make clear, this is not something we came up with.
Right.
We're basing it on a federal indictment and a superseding indictment.
Cabello's in there.
Yeah, a bunch of people are. And so, but what it proves is, and the reason why I raise the indictments is because the indictments are the point of the $50 million reward. And I believe the $25 or $10 million reward for Cabello and for others. My point is that this allegation, this claim that the Maduro regime is a narco-terrorist organization is not on the basis of political talk or speculation. It is on the basis of evidence provided to a grand jury in the Southern District of New York that returned an indictment. And that's why I point to those indictments.
Can I ask you on Ukraine quickly? Because Russia has deployed its latest nuclear-capable missile system to Belarus, according to that country's leadership. We've heard from a number of European leaders, the Chancellor of Germany himself, that they think this era of Pax Americana is gone, that they are needing to prepare to be on a war footing because of the threat from Putin. Do you believe, does this administration believe today that Vladimir Putin will end his march on the eastern flank of Ukraine? And do you stand by our European allies against any kind of attack?
Look, we have heard the same concerns from our allies in NATO. It's why we are in NATO. It's why we meet with them. It's why we talk to them all the time. I've spoken to Mark Rutte this year probably 40 times, and he's spoken to multiple people in our administration as well, multiple times. He's been here multiple times. He speaks to the president directly. It's why the United States basically is over 50% of NATO, both in troop commitments and in financial commitments as well. It's why we remain in NATO. It's why the president had a very positive visit in NATO. In the end, that's why we're in this alliance. And that's why Article 5 in the NATO alliance is important, and the president has reiterated that. We think it's a very strong deterrent against any of these fears or concerns that any of our allies in the region may have. And the president's been clear that we are committed to NATO, we're committed to the alliance, and our commitment isn't just rhetorical. Our commitment is in action, in the troops that have been deployed, in the monies that have been spent, in the capabilities that are located, in the cooperation and work that we do every single day with our NATO allies. The only thing we're asking for, which is not unfair, is for our partners in the alliance to improve their own capabilities. Because the more capable our allies in NATO are, the more capable NATO is.
But are
We're
you
going to
saying
keep
these
doing our
allies
part.
are-
We just want them to do more. And they've committed to do more.
But these allies are saying that they are concerned now.
Sure. And that's why we have NATO.
So nothing has changed? Pax Americana, what the Chancellor of
Oh, I don't
Germany
know.
said
I
that
don't know
they-
why he's saying that. You'll have to ask him why he's saying that. The truth of the matter is that NATO is the key defense alliance and agreement that has provided stability on the European continent. We believe it is stronger today than it's ever been because our allies have committed to increase their own defense spending. The more capable our allies are, we've already made our commitment. We've been spending billions and billions and billions. It's the single biggest part of the largest government budget in the world is defense spending in the United States. So we've already done our part, and our part isn't just rhetorical, it's real. We have troops stationed there, we have capabilities there, we have weapons we've provided our partners in the region as well. We believe that if you want a strong NATO, you want your allies in NATO to be stronger. The more capable our allies in NATO are, the stronger NATO is collectively. And that's why we're very pleased to see them make that commitment of 5%, with the exception of Spain. And that's why the president left our NATO gathering earlier this year so enthusiastic about the future of NATO and about our role in it. And in fact, that's why the president's been working with NATO countries on the Pearl program, which is what's providing weaponry to the Ukrainians today. Go ahead.
Secretario, gracias por su tiempo y por atendernos. Sé que esta es como la 10ª pregunta de Venezuela, pero quiero quedar claro con varias cosas. Primero, usted puede hacer una referencia al comentario que hizo el presidente Trump apolítico cuando dijo los días de Maduro están contados. Eso se refiere a días, semanas, meses. Esperamos un 2026 sin Nicolás Maduro. Y me gustaría también que se refiriera a la orden de escoltar esos buques petroleros que acaba de dar Maduro a su armada, esos buques sancionados que ustedes están incautando. Algunos de ellos ya fueron escoltados, no estaban en la lista de sancionados, pero ¿qué pasaría si eso fuera con un buque sancionado? Y por último, Maduro le ha pedido al ejército colombiano que se una como un solo ejército en medio de su desespero por responder a este cerco.
Son 3 preguntas. En el tercero, nosotros no vemos eso como algo serio en términos de involucrar las Fuerzas Armadas de Colombia. En términos de los buques, como bien han dicho, creo que salieron 4 buques ayer, que ninguno de los 4 eran sancionados. Y no existe nada que vaya a impedir nuestra habilidad de poder enforzar las leyes de Estados Unidos en términos de los buques que son sancionados. Y en la primera pregunta yo no voy a especular sobre, tendrá que preguntarle a la Casa Blanca. El comentario del presidente simplemente para decirle que sin duda pensamos que el régimen de Maduro es ilegítimo y que su cooperación con estos grupos terroristas en nuestra región, incluso sus propias actividades terroristas, son una amenaza a la seguridad nacional de Estados Unidos. The 3 points that he asked about, one had to do with the Maduro calling on the Colombian armed forces to join ranks with him, and we're not really focused on that rhetoric. We're also not concerned about, there were 4 boats yesterday that were escorted by so-called naval vessels. Those were not sanctioned boats to begin with, but there's nothing that's going to impede our ability to enforce U.S. law when it comes to sanctions. We're not concerned about that. Sanctioned boats, we have the capabilities necessary to enforce our laws. We'll have a judicial order, we'll execute on those orders, and there's nothing that will impede us from being able to do that. And on the first point, the question was something about President Trump had said that Maduro's days are numbered. I didn't hear that quote. Was that a recent quote? ¿Esto fue reciente?
El 9 de diciembre.
Yeah, so ultimately, look, our observation is the same I've made here repeatedly, which is that the fundamental challenge we have here is that the Maduro regime isn't just illegitimate, they openly cooperate in terrorism against the United States. And that's a problem, and it remains a problem, and it's at the core of this.
Habló con María Corina Machado, ¿tiene pensado recibirla en Washington?
No está nada programado, yo creo que ella todavía está en Oslo. Pero obviamente yo he hablado con ella mucho en el pasado. Go ahead.
Are you going to tell us in English?
He asked about Maria Corina Machado. I believe she's still in Norway. I'm sure there'll be a meet. She'll come to the U.S. at some point, and I've obviously spoken to her many, many times over the years.
Thank you, sir, for taking so much time with us today. How many visas has the State Department revoked under your leadership so far in the last year, and how many of those are student visas?
I forgot the exact number or the breakdown of them. It's over 60 or 70,000 for different and variety of reasons. Some are students, some are people that were not in the country, but we denied them reentry. I can get you the exact numbers. I don't want to be misquoted because that's a rolling number, an average number. But look, this is not a punitive thing. We're going out to try to make examples of it. Our visa system, okay, who you allow to visit your country should reflect the national interest. We said that from the very beginning. It was one of the directives that we got from the president. It's one of the things he ran on. And so our visa process basically is, and there are some times we'll deny people visas because of activities they've undertaken overseas. Other times it's people that have visas but are in the United States doing things that run counter to our national interest. And the law gives us the right, and in fact, I would argue the obligation to remove people like that from our country. And we're going to continue to do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, sometimes somebody comes in and says, oh, I want to come in as a student. They're here as a student, and then once they're here, they're involved in nefarious activity. We're going to remove them from the country. But maybe they're here as a researcher. Maybe they're here as, I don't want to say journalist because you guys will get upset, but it could be anything. These are visitors to the country. A visa is a visitor. It's not a right. By the way, we deny visas every day all over the world. People will go to an embassy, they'll sit for an interview, and the consular officer will deny them a visa because of something that came up in their record, because of something that came up in their interview, whatever it may be. So if you have the power to deny someone a visa before they get one, you most certainly have the power to revoke it once they get one and then do something they shouldn't be doing. So there's a variety of reasons why visas are denied, but all of them are because it implicates our national interest or national security in some way.
You began the briefing by talking about your confirmation hearing, and one of the core commitments or goals you set for yourself in that hearing was to rid the State Department of anti-Semitism.
Alrighty, we will monitor the rest of this, what happens there. We do have some breaking news just in, though. There is an active shooter reported at the Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. We want to take you to a report we're getting. This is directly from Luke Air Force Base. They say Luke Air Force Base is responding to a reported active shooter incident on the installation. Personnel on base have been directed to shelter in place and follow guidance from first responders. Law enforcement and emergency personnel are actively responding. The safety of our airmen, families, and community is our top priority. The public is asked to avoid the area and not spread unverified information. Additional information will be released as it becomes available. This, of course, news just in. We are trying to get some reaction, and I believe we do have a little bit of reaction from coming in possibly here from Ruben Gallego, who represents the area. So if you guys, we will get that pulled up for you guys. Here we go. Ruben Gallego he's reacting to this news saying, stand by, this is okay, he's reacting to the news. He said, my team is closely monitoring reports of an active shooter at Luke Air Force Base in the West Valley. Of course, I want to know where the Luke Air Force Base is. This is near, this is in Glendale, which is near Phoenix, Arizona, the capital, of course, of Arizona. It says, thank you to law enforcement and emergency crews for their swift response. Everyone in the area, please remain cautious as we continue to learn more. So, right here, we're going to continue to monitor here. If we have any new information that comes in from this area, we will bring it to you live right here. So if we get any more news again on this breaking situation, we will bring that to you as we get it in here. So I just wanted to interrupt really quickly here. We want to make sure we're getting the news to you as it occurs, when it occurs. So if there is any updates, this was about 30 minutes ago that we're learning of this report from the Luke Air Force Base. So if we get any more details, we'll bring that directly to you. Here's what we'll do. We'll turn back because Secretary of State Marco Rubio is continuing to take questions there. If we get any more details, we will bring those to you as soon as we get them. In the meantime, let's go back to Marco Rubio over at the State Department.
Process should have been a red flag but wasn't identified, so you can fix that before you restart the program. So I would imagine that's the process we're going to go through as well. Okay, yes, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Secretary. Thanks for all your time here today. An issue I believe is close to your heart, Cuba. Is it the policy of the United States to seek regime change in Havana? And should we see the developments that are going on right now with Venezuela, the U.S. policies, as part of an effort to bring down the communist government?
Yeah,
And if I may briefly, do you stand by your statement earlier this year that nobody has died from U.S. aid cuts?
On your first point, I think it's not just the policy of this administration. I think every administration would love to see a different type of situation in Cuba. Cuba's a disaster. It's a disaster. It's not just because they're Marxists and because they're terrorists. They're incompetent. These are incompetent people, and they've destroyed that country. On the second point, I'm very proud of the changes we've made in foreign aid. Just yesterday, the day before, we are, I think before the end of this year, going to enter into over 50 compacts, health compacts with different countries around the world. Understand the way this used to work. We used to go to a country and say, we're going to give you a bunch of money for your healthcare programs. And then we would go out and hire some NGO in Northern Virginia or whatever. They would take their 60% cut off the top for administrative aid. They would take another 20%. Before you knew it, just a portion of that money was even reaching these countries. In many cases, many of those countries, it is true. I heard somebody whisper that's not true. It is true. In many of these countries, the governments didn't even know how much money was being spent. We are now entering into government-to-government compacts with these governments. And the compacts are the following. Not only are they provided assistance, but they are being provided a plan to build up their own self-sustainment and their own ability.
Okay, as I said, when we got updates, we would give them right to you, and we are learning some pretty good news in this situation. The all clear has been given at Luke Air Force Base. Glendale PD says there is no indication that there were, in fact, shots fired. Stand by here, and I will get you maybe some more details here. Again, this is coming from Glendale PD. I just learned this from the news source there. We'll see if we have no new updates directly from Luke Air Force Base, but I can tell you I was just watching the AZ Family, which is CBS 5, appears to be another channel in Arizona, and they're saying the all clear has been given. So again, this all came around about 10:40 a.m. when we saw that Facebook post. So 10:40 a.m. would have been 11:40 a.m. here, so it's now 12:40. And then that was 51 minutes ago now, and now we're learning there has been the all clear given, at least that's from Glendale PD. The Glendale Police Department, of course, that is where this Air Force Base is. Glendale, of course, not too far from Phoenix, so we will continue to monitor this situation. But good news really coming out of this that we had just broken in and given you guys some details, and I apologize that we continue to interrupt this State Department briefing that is ongoing. We will provide updates on things of that nature. We are going to go back over to the Secretary of State, still taking questions. He's been taking questions for now about, I would say, an hour and a half, if not more than that. Probably, it's been a little more than an hour. I would say it's going to go into 2 hours, maybe a little longer. It started as kind of end-of-year remarks, and then he began taking questions from every member of the press there, going row by row, the entire State Department press corps. We are going to go back to that. We are also standing by for the president to deliver remarks on prescription drug prices. We'll bring you that when it comes about. In the meantime, let's go back to the State Department.
We're also concerned about the impact that some of their policies are having on our social media platforms. As you recently saw, X is facing this massive multi-million-dollar fine that they're going to have to pay, I guess, if they want to continue to operate. But I think more importantly, I think it touches on the broader question that was asked a little bit earlier. We all talk about how these alliances, in many cases our alliances with our European partners, are built on our common principles, our common values, as much as anything else. These aren't just a geopolitical arrangement. It is an alliance with like-minded countries with whom we share values and principles. And one of those values and principles, we hope, is freedom and the freedom of expression. And we're concerned that that is eroding. Okay, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Alrighty there, that event wrapping up over at the State Department. As you continue looking at feed here, one moment, there we go. Back to my face here. So we will, we just were watching that for the last little bit. Some breaking news came in the middle of that. A lot of news, a lot of headlines we are still following right now and will continue to do so. What I do want to go to right now is over to this camera we have in Washington, D.C. right now. That is a live look at the Kennedy Center, as it is to be renamed the Kennedy Trump Center, as you take a look there at where that renaming is ongoing behind those large pieces of what appears to be like blue tarp put up here. So it's going to be interesting. We're watching this. At least I've been watching this. I don't think we put it up yet on your guys' screens yet, but I've been watching this to see what happens here and what we get, any new updates coming from that. So well, if we see like the blue tarp come down, trust I'll bring it to you guys live right here when that happens. I want to take you over to the White House because in just moments we are expecting President Donald Trump to speak on drug prices. It may come at the top of the hour. The original schedule said it would come at 12 p.m. Central, maybe 1 p.m. Central at this point. That's what I'm seeing from a few other news sources. So we'll wait and just whenever that camera comes into the Oval Office, where I assume this is where the president is giving that announcement, um, we'll take you there live. You see that plane flying there? Looks like the camera may even be tracking it. I can't quite tell. There we go. So we'll continue to follow details that come about on that. In the meantime, we're going to sneak in a quick break. More to come when we come back. Welcome back here into Brooklyn News Live, our continued coverage of all the events happening around us. Do want to turn to some news that is coming in today. A NASCAR driver was killed after a NASCAR driver and some of his family was killed after a plane crash occurred in North Carolina. We were covering a little bit of that while we were on the air yesterday. The NASCAR family is devastated at the loss of Greg Biffle, who was one of our 75 greatest drivers and became known for his relentless post-career humanitarian work. We extend our deepest condolences. That was the post on X by NASCAR there. So devastating, of course, on his lost that plane crash. He was on that plane and again was killed. So may he rest in peace. Let's take you out live here to Brooklyn Live. Look at that R-Dot camera. I want to pull up what the weather's going to look like. It's a question everybody wants to know. There's a look at where things stand right now. 43 degrees outside. A little chilly. You might need a jacket because it feels like 38. It's still a little windy. I mean, last time it was really windy. Saturday, Sunday, take a look at that forecast there. Saturday, high of 61, low of 39. Mostly sunny. Sunday, more clouds can be expected, as the high is going to be 52 and a low of 38. So, not too bad of a weekend. It's going to be a little warmer than what we've seen. Cold in the morning, warm as the afternoons approach. Time now, 12:43 p.m. here, Central Time, 1:43 on the East Coast. And if you're on the West Coast, it is 10:43. So good morning to all the people on the West Coast. We have a lot of news to get to. That is one thing for sure. We're going to seek a quick break in. We are continuing for a number of events to begin because we expect President Donald Trump to also speak a little later in the day. So a quick break. Brooklyn News Live will be right back. Hi, everybody. Welcome back in here to Brooklyn News Live. So good to continue to be with you here. Still waiting on President Donald Trump to speak on prescription prices. I'm Jackson Mitchell. Again, good to be with you here. We are going to take a look at some other feeds that we were following from earlier. Little Rock City officials held kind of an address to the public. This was kind of this morning. We want to play a little bit of that. This is from KATV in Little Rock, the local station there. Let's listen into that event. This is from this morning.
Well, good morning. I want to thank everyone for joining us here today for our end of the year public safety update here in Little Rock, Arkansas State Capital City. One of the things that I recently shared with Journey Taylor interviews that while we're seeing so much growth in the city, you can't have a true prosperous city unless it's safe and secure. And with that being said, I am overjoyed to report that yet again we are seeing very good and positive numbers as it relates to the crime reduction of violence here in Arkansas State Capital City. Chief Helton will often tell you that the true way to look at the numbers to understand about safety in any city across this nation is what the 5-year average is. And yes, you still have to pay attention to the year to date. And when you look at those numbers, the numbers continue to share the story of our holistic crime reduction approach and how it's working. The numbers just quite frankly don't lie. And so I'm happy to report that over the past 5 years, we've seen that overall crime has been reduced by 27%. Violent crime has been reduced by 21%. Year to date, very much similar mirrors that. Year to date, overall crime is down 21%, and violent crime is down 12%. But the most significant number as we look at our end of the year results, particularly over the last 5 years, is homicides are down over the past 5 years 47%. That is a very significant turnaround in our city. And that's because of the leadership of Chief Helton and the men and women of the Little Rock Police Department, alongside our holistic approach partners in the prevention and victim treatment led by Michael Sanders, our Director of Community Programs, where we truly focus on prevention, intervention, treatment, as well as data-driven decisions for targeted patrols in high crime areas. And because of that holistic approach, we've seen this significant turnaround in homicides in this state capital city, as well as overall crime and violent crime. I'm also happy to report that this past Tuesday, the City of Little Rock passed its 2026 budget. And that budget reflects our true priorities, which is economic development, quality of life in place, understanding that infrastructure is the foundation of economic development, but also public safety still remains priority number one. In that budget, you saw a historic pay raise for both police and fire, adding an additional 5%, maintaining the City of Little Rock and Arkansas State Capital City being the highest paid municipal force in the state. That helps us retain our officers, that helps us keep the officers and keep our vacancy numbers down. I'm very glad that we put in additional incentives, whether it's a $10,000 sign-on bonus for new recruits or for those who live outside the city who want to move to the city, an additional $5,000 bonus. These efforts help our police department bolster itself to be effective, but most importantly, focused on true community policing. And in their work and their partnership with our Department of Community Programs, as we focus on diversity training, restraint, understanding de-escalation tactics, and to move forward to have even more trust within the community as we move forward from a public safety standpoint. In addition to that budget, you see this not only focus on the men and women police department, but we understand in this day and age we have to be smarter on crime. And so you saw an increase in close to $1 million in technology to ensure that we continue to bolster the activities of our real-time crime center that's helped us truly move forward in driving crime down in our city, making us safer. In addition to that, it's not just the community programs, it's not just the men and women of Little Rock Police Department, it's also the additional dollars that we're focusing on within code enforcement, because we understand that we have to drive down blight in our city, and blight can create crime and at least become a host for crime. And so all these measures have been a part of this budget to ensure that we continue to be a safe city, part of that process. I want to thank everyone that plays a vital role, and particularly a group of individuals who don't always get the praise that we give the praise to the police department. That's our 911 professionals. They're the ones receiving the phone calls in individuals' darkest moments, and they are relaying the information to ensure that our officers have accurate information so they can truly be the guardians of our city. And I want to take this time to acknowledge them. And through that, you see this holistic approach and this team approach to ensure that we continue to have a safe city. And as we close out this year, and Chief Helton will give more information about these particular numbers, he'll also give updates about the holiday season that we're in. As we're coming upon Christmas, we're in the middle of Hanukkah, we'll be having Kwanzaa and many other celebrations as it relates to faith activities. We just want the residents of Little Rock to know that we're safe. We can always be safer. We always know there's more work to do. And under the leadership of Chief Helton and men and women of Little Rock Police Department, we have a safe city. We're going to be safer. And we're very grateful for everyone playing this team role to drive down crime here in the city of Little Rock. Chief Helton.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Scott, City Manager Hubbard, and members of the board. On behalf of the men and women of Little Rock Police Department, I truly appreciate the support that you've been able to provide for us over my tenure as chief, and look forward to embracing that going forward into the future, and doing the ultimate thing that means something to us is keeping public safety priority number one for us in our community. As the year draws to a close, the Little Rock Police Department reflects memorably on a year marked by continuous progress and building safer neighborhoods and stronger community partnerships. You know, at the beginning of the year, the mayor tasked all the board or the directors for the various departments in the city to get back to the basics. And that's pretty much what we've done. We've gone back to the basics and really embraced what policing is, how do we improve that, and then working hand in hand with other city departments. The mayor kind of referenced that a little minute ago, or a few moments ago. Working very closely with Director Sanders with community programs, Director Howard with housing neighborhood programs, Leland Couch, Director of Parks. All these intertwine with public safety on how do we get better, how do we work together to improve their overall health and quality of life for our communities. So that has been very effective in contributing to that public safety effort. As Mayor Scott noted, our crime numbers and our statistics have been trending downward. I'm very pleased with where we're at right now within our community, but we still have a lot of work to do. There are ongoing improvements that stem from concerted efforts, not only from the law enforcement standpoint, but our citywide approach to public safety. While crime stats reflect a great year, I do recognize that there's still a lot of work that needs to be done and will be done as we move forward and close out this year and move forward in 2026. Our commitment to collaboration, innovation, and community partnership remains the driving force behind our success. Since the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, the Little Rock Police Department has increased our efforts to continue our patrols with a holiday detail, really focusing in on shopping centers, all those locations where we know large gathering of individuals, restaurants, things of that nature, in order to make sure people that come to our community have a safe shopping experience, but also enjoy the atmosphere of what the holiday season is all about. So as we get ready to navigate next week being Christmas, everybody's gonna be out doing their last minute shopping. Remain vigilant, continue to practice all those safe things that you know that you should do, not leaving packages open in your car, being aware of what's going on around you. And if you see something, say something. So we encourage the community to do that. We're gonna continue all those efforts all the way through the end of the year into the New Year holiday weekend. I also want to thank our detectives with the Real-Time Crime Center. I cannot express the support that they provide to the men and women of this department and how their operations have really impacted us in a positive way. I want to highlight an exciting accomplishment as we've done just in a short time this year. So far in 2025, we recovered 109 stolen vehicles. This time last year was 105. The dollar amount for this year is like $1.9 million in recovery of property for individuals who had their vehicles stolen. Last year was about $1.1 million. We couldn't do this without the help of our community. As of date, our real-time crime center has roughly 2,700 cameras registered. This is individuals that have registered their whether Ring doorbell camera or other devices that may have on their residence. They've registered and let us know they have cameras. And we have an additional 2,500 businesses or community stakeholders that have integrated their cameras with our real-time crime center. This demonstrates the community's shared effort and support to making our community safe and ensuring accountability. As we look ahead to the department's endeavors in 2026, we have our quarterly meetings that will be coming up in early January. First one being with the 12th Street Division on January the 15th. I strongly encourage members of our community to be part of this. We've seen a growth in our quarterly meetings in 2025, and that is very important to us because it's important for the community to be able to come in, have conversations with the commanders that are over those certain areas, whether it be the Northwest Division, 12th Street, or the Southwest, get to know who those leaders are, get to hear what the problems are, make us aware of problems because we don't know what we don't know, and it has the opportunity to see what actually is going on. So we encourage the community to come out, be part of those quarterly meetings. We will continue to engage our community in every way possible. We want to maintain transparency, open dialogue by continuing to engage, contact with our community members, because that is a cornerstone of effective policing. We're encouraged to our growth and participation with all members. We seek to look to improve that as we move forward in 2026, because honestly, you've heard me say it many times before, everybody has a role in public safety. It's not just a police matter. And I concur with the mayor's statement earlier. All the other departments, 911, fire, code enforcement, community programs, parks, the zoo, no matter what it is in city departments, they all have a vital role. And I'm honored to be working side by side with those directors to make sure we improve our community. We see that a healthy community is a thriving community, and that's what we want to look for as we continue to grow as a city. On behalf of the men and women of Little Rock Police Department, I'd like to wish our community a very happy and safe holiday season and make you all have a prosperous new year. And with that, I'll conclude, and I guess, Mayor, for any questions.
Thank you so much, Chief. Again, we're proud to share this update, also recognizing, again, while the numbers clearly speak for themselves, there's always more work to do. And also, numbers are numbers, and to people, there's always about the feeling. And that's the reason why we know we got to continue to focus on community policing led by Chief Hilton, and also the work of Michael Sanders here with us today with our community programs. But again, we are grateful for the safety of this city led by Chief Hilton and men and women of Little Rock Police Department.
Alrighty, we want to take you over right now to the White House here as we do prioritize live events. You're taking live inside that room where we expect President Donald Trump to be here. Might be doing a mic check here, maybe.
Good audio. Good. Cuts. You guys got audio? Good. Okay.
Yeah, they were just doing a quick audio check there, but we've just gotten this in. Sorry, we were just getting this feed in, so I wanted to take you to it. It's meant to be an address here on Medicare, I should say, like medication, prescription drug prices. I had to get that out there. So we've just gotten that feed in for you. We will go live there whenever it begins. I want to note, going over to this feed, you may have seen it also in the bottom part of your screen there. They've unveiled the left side of it, so you can see the Donald, no D at the end there, just the Donald. So we'll see what it says when it has all been completed. Right now, though, a bus, of course, wants to block it when we are right at the point here. So we're waiting on the president to enter this room, I expect, and make this announcement on prescription drug prices. Excuse me here. Sorry, I'm just typing in our graphic that's about to appear at the bottom of your screen. There you go. So We're waiting on that to begin when it does. Oh, and they've actually just unveiled that final piece of it. There you go, the Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts. There you go. It's been unveiled there. We're just looking at it. This comes after the board appointed by the president voted to rename the center. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I was just seeing some people that were, of course, not in favor of the president talking about what's going to happen when there's a Democratic president. What that board might do. Of course, the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center is a independent agency, but we'll see. I want to go back over live to the White House where we've just gotten this feed in as we continue to wait again soon the president to make an announcement on prescription drug prices. So we will, as soon as we get that in, we will take you there, of course, when that feed begins, when we begin to see the president. In the meantime, why don't we just sneak in maybe a quick break? I'm trying to think what we can do to fill in this time. We'll sneak in a quick break here. When if we see the president, we will take you right back out of that break, though. Welcome back into Brooklyn News Live here. Continued look at that feed we're getting in right now from the White House as we expect Trump to make an announcement here in just a few moments on drug prices. Do we have any audio coming in from this feed? We do have some audio. Peers are moving over, maybe getting ready for... the president to walk out here. It's kind of rare that we get a feed this early, but we'll see what the announcement might be. It appears some major drug... people for major drug companies are there expected on this announcement to lower drug costs. So when the president walks out, we'll take you there. We've been monitoring this feed that you've been watching for the last little bit on the renaming of the Trump Kennedy Center, you could say now. There you go. There's a look at it. That's a rename by the independent board, voting yesterday to rename it. The action's already changing today. The Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. So we will continue to watch that. Again, soon, President Donald Trump to make this announcement on drug prices. Why don't we just turn the audio up here and wait for the president to walk out? Change plans here because I'm not sure how long we're going to be waiting. So we'll just, again, it's just so rare that we get a feed like this, so we just got to use it to our advantage here. But a live look full screen there at the White House as we continue to wait for this event to begin. As soon as the president walks out, of course, we will take you to it live. It's a prescription drug price. This comes, you remember, after he hit drug prices in his address to the nation. We aired it live right here on Brookland News. So. He hit drug prices, talked about TrumpRx.gov, of course, the website that they're making on drug prices, things of that nature. So we're waiting for that announcement to get underway, it appears. We're just waiting on it to all get underway as we continue to look at that feed there. So when it does begin, we will... Again, as I've said I think a few times now, we'll take you there live as soon as it does begin. When the president does, in fact, walk out. Maybe they were just told to bend their knees so they don't pass out. Not sure. They appear to be all racing up their knees in hopes, of course, that they don't pass out. Live look there in the Roosevelt Room in the White House. As we again are waiting for this event to get underway. When it does, of course, we already got the feed, so we'll just turn the audio up and continue listening in. See the presidential podium there, and a sign there on the far right side as we await this announcement from the president. We'll continue kind of waiting on the shot because, again, we don't want to miss the moment that this all happens, that when the president walks out and makes this announcement on drug prices. So we'll kind of just continue watching here for when the president begins to walk out. Of course, expected to make an announcement on drug prices. Okay, we're still waiting for that event to get underway. Here's what we'll do, because we're watching a feed and we interrupted it on that Little Rock feed that we were watching. Why don't we go back to it, and we will continue just watching this feed that we have for you on your screen. So here's the last little piece of that Little Rock feed from the end of the year address that was held earlier today.
We're encouraged to our growth and participation with all members. We seek to look to improve that as we move forward in 2026, because honestly, you've heard me say it many times before, everybody has a role in public safety. It's not just a police matter. And I concur with the mayor's statement earlier. All the other departments, 911, fire, code enforcement, community programs, parks, the zoo, no matter what it is in city departments, they all have a vital role. And I'm honored to be working side by side with those directors to make sure we improve our community. We see that a healthy community is a thriving community, and that's what we want to look for as we continue to grow as a city. On behalf of the men and women of Little Rock Police Department, I'd like to wish our community a very happy and safe holiday season and make you all have a prosperous new year. And with that, I'll conclude, and I guess, Mayor, for any questions.
Thank you so much, Chief. Again, we're proud to share this update, also recognizing, again, while the numbers clearly speak for themselves, there's always more work to do. And also, numbers are numbers, and to people, there's always about the feeling. And that's the reason why we know we got to continue to focus on community policing led by Chief Hilton, and also the work of Michael Sanders here with us today with our community programs. But again, we are grateful for the safety of this city led by Chief Hilton and the men and women of the Little Rock Police Department, and a very significant drop in overall crime and violent crime over the past 5 years as well as year to date. I will now take any questions.
Where do we stand on fire policing staffing in the year?
Right now, as it relates to police staffing, and Chief Hilton will step in, but I will tell you, right now we may have 50 to 60 vacancies. As I'd often share with everyone, and Chief Hilton has often shared as well, in the mid-90s, due to the Cox deal of President Clinton, we had an influx of officers across the United States. And so now we're in this retirement season. So any given year, you're going to see a retirement of somewhere between 35 to 40 individuals. And that's the reason why we've had a continuous recruitment process. That's also the reason why we get the $10,000 sign-on bonuses. So while today it may be 50 to 60, February it may be 35 as far as the vacancy. And so it fluctuates throughout the year. But based on our projections, we believe by next summer that we could get as low as 20 to 30 as far as the vacancy, which is really good. But even right now, I think we're probably at 90, 91, 92% as far as fully occupied, which is great compared to other cities across the nation. Fire, we're always fully staffed in fire. Next question. Going once, going twice. Merry Christmas.
Alrighty, the ending of that little end of year public safety address by Little Rock officials there. Let's take you back out here because we are expecting in just moments President Donald Trump to announce lower drug costs from the Roosevelt Room there in the White House. When he does, we will listen into his remarks in full. In the meantime, a quick break. Brooklyn News Live returns in just a moment. Alrighty, President Donald Trump, you see him there. Welcome back in here to Brooklyn News Line. President Donald Trump there, shaking the hands. You see RFK Jr., Dr. Mehmet Oz, a few other administration officials there as Donald Trump here soon to speak. Let's listen in.
These are among the greatest executives anywhere in the world, so it's an honor to have them with us, and I think they'll be very happy about what we have to say. I thought I'd start by announcing two things. This is the gold card that, as you know, the Secretary of Commerce and myself and some others have been working on for quite a while. And Howard, how much have we sold in a few days?
$1.3 billion worth in a matter of a couple of days.
That's essentially it's the green card on steroids. And it's a pathway. And it's been an amazing thing. And as you know, millions of people pour into our country from the border. And not anymore, they don't know, nobody comes in actually anymore. But under the Biden administration, 25 million people came in. And they came from prisons and mental institutions, and they were drug dealers, and all sorts of people came in that shouldn't be here. They came from the jails all over Venezuela, all over the world, the Congo. And now when they come in, they have to pay $1 million. And we've had a tremendous surge, and you're going to be happier than anybody because when you go to Harvard and the Wharton School of Finance and all of the great schools and you want to hire somebody and then you find out that, I'm sorry, they can't stay in our country for more than 24 hours. They graduate from the top schools. These people want to hire them. Now you're able to buy a card and you're able to keep people in the country. They can't keep people in the country. And they go to Canada, they go to other countries. A lot of times they go to Canada even though they work for the companies behind me. So now you're able to buy, the companies are able to buy the card and use it for people coming in to our country so they can stay in our country instead of being immediately shipped out after graduating. They graduate number one in their class at the best school, and they want to go to work for Johnson & Johnson, as an example, who's not here today, who will be here next week. They're well represented here. But they want to go to work for one of the great companies behind me, and you learn they can't do that because they're shipped out of the country. They're not shipped out anymore. So your company will pay a little bit, but that's okay. You'll be able to get them. So I just wanted to, it's called the gold card, the Trump gold card. Quite a beautiful thing. And you've taken in just a few days, you've taken in over $1.5 billion. That goes all toward reducing debt, goes into the Treasury of the United States. And I thought I'd do this before we start on most favored nations. I want to read this because I would have said it the other night, but I was not allotted too much time, actually. You had a couple of brand new shows opening, and I understand that. But I do want to say, and some people say, oh, you shouldn't say it. It sounds negative. To me, I think it sounds positive. The only reason our unemployment tucked up and went up to 4.5%, which it went up to 4.5%, which is quite a low number, but still, is because we are reducing the government workforce by numbers that have never been seen before. In other words, government jobs are way down. And as you know, we don't need 10 people to fill one job, which is what we had in government in many cases. So the government workforce, by numbers that have never been seen before, has been reduced very substantially and will continue to be reduced. 100% of our new jobs are in the private sector. So this is for the last number of months. Think of that, 100%. Are you shocked to hear that? That's the way to make America great again, when you think, right? It's the only way. 100% of new jobs are in the private sector. And I could reduce unemployment to 2%, 1%, or practically zero by just hiring people into the federal government, even though those jobs are not necessary, which is what we had before. We had millions and millions of people having jobs that they never even showed up. So I wish that the media would report that the 4.5% is an amazing number. And again, if they don't report it, I guess maybe I'll just let some people go into the federal workforce. It'll look really wonderful. And what we're doing is the only way you can do it to make a country great. You can't have the government jobs, you have to have the private sector jobs, and these are among the biggest hires of private sector. So we have reduced the federal workforce by tremendous hundreds of thousands of people, and that reflects in unemployment, but that will be used up very quickly, and we've 100% of the new jobs, which, by the way, it's a record-setting number of jobs, too, is in the private sector. And I think that'll get even stronger when these buildings being built all over the country, of which they're building some, too. But AI and auto plants and everything else, they're being built all over the country. When that happens, your numbers will be even better. But I would like you to report it the way it is. We don't do the federal workforce jobs. We're reducing that very substantially. I'm thrilled to be joined by the leaders of 9 of the world's largest pharmaceutical manufacturers, all very big names, celebrities in their own right, very, very powerful people, and they head some of the most admired companies anywhere in the world. It's a great group. To announce that they've agreed to offer many of their flagship drugs, really all of their flagship drugs, at heavily discounted, most favored nations prices. In other words, whatever the drug sells for over the world, in the world, whatever the lowest number is, if it's Germany, if it's in UK, anywhere, we will match that price. Right now, sometimes it's 10 times higher. We've been laughed at and scoffed at for years. For years. In fact, I was going to do it in my first term, but unfortunately, with the advent of COVID, as you would say, it was not, I don't think it was a very good time to be hitting up Spain, Italy, France, but now we're doing it. So the hardest thing to do was going to be to get a country to do it, because we would have a pill in New York that was for sale for $130, and you could buy it in Germany and France and Spain and someplace anyways. They set their own prices for $10. So we'd pay 10 or 13 times more, pay 5 times more, pay all different prices. Now, whatever the lowest price is. Now, the pharmaceutical companies were difficult, but they also love our country. They knew it was unfair. And they were great. I appreciate it. But the bigger problem was going to be the countries. How are you going to get the countries to do it? And we told them, if you don't do it, we're going to have to use tariffs, and we're going to charge you a 10% tariff, which is far more money than the money we're talking about. And they immediately agreed to do it. So we have all the foreign countries agreeing to do it. If we didn't have the use of tariffs, we would never be able to do this. But we used tariff, and they said, is it a threat? I said, yes, it is a threat. Then they said, we will do it, and they dropped the price. So what's happening, because the world is bigger than the United States in terms of people, that same pill would go from $10 to $20 for them, which is an increase, but it wouldn't go to, midway. But it would go from $10 to $20. Ours would go from $130 to $20. So we dropped way down. They went up a little bit. And everyone knows it's the way it is. They, for years, would just say, no, as medicine got more expensive for us, it would stay. They said, nope, you can't sell it in this country. Let the United States pay. And we had other presidents, all of them, said, okay, we'll pay. So we were subsidizing the entire world. We're not doing it anymore. This is the biggest thing having to do with drugs in the history of the purchase of drugs. And I don't think the maybe press will treat it as a story. This is the biggest front page story that you'll ever see. This has a huge bearing, too, on the healthcare, because a big part of healthcare is drugs, pharmaceuticals, right, Oz? And this will have a tremendous impact on the reduction of health care. The biggest impact is going to be that the money should be paid not to the insurance companies, directly to the people, and the people will buy their own health care. So we're going to be working that. The problem is that the Democrats are very much controlled by the insurance companies that make all that money, but we're not going to let that happen. Starting next year, American drug prices will come down fast and furious, and will soon be among the lowest in the developed world. So in other words, whatever the lowest price for a certain drug, of which these companies make much of it, whatever the lowest price is, that price will come down to that price. So we will get the lowest price anywhere in the world. If they're lower in England than they are in Germany, we take the England price. As of today, 14 out of 17 largest pharmaceutical companies have now agreed. 14 out of 17. Oh, those three they're in deep trouble. But actually, they've agreed because I think those three companies are coming in at a different time next week. So they've agreed. Johnson & Johnson is one of them, right?
After the holidays.
Why? They couldn't do it faster?
No, we're going to be talking about Trump RX.
Oh, okay. Trump RX. Trump RX is doing well. As of today, 14 out of the 17 largest pharmaceutical companies, but they've all agreed, have now agreed to drastically lower drug prices for their American patients, for the American people and patients. This represents the greatest victory for patient affordability in the history of American healthcare by far, and every single American will benefit. So this is the biggest thing ever to happen on drug pricing and on healthcare. This will have a tremendous impact on healthcare itself. I want to thank Sanofi CEO Paul Hudson. Paul? Hi, Paul. I hope they have you in some order. I'll be checking.
Alphabetical, yes, but...
Okay, well, we'll do the best we can. Thank you, Paul. Great company, by the way. Novartis CEO Vas Narasimhan. Thank you very much, Vas. Great job. Genentech CEO Ashley Megaragri. Where are you, Ashley? How are you? Hi. Thank you very much. Great companies. Boehringer Ingelheim President John Michael Bors. John Michael, thank you very much. Gilead CEO Dan O'Day. Dan? Thank you, Dan. Great job. It's a good company. Bristol Myers Squibb Executive Vice President Carrie Gallman. Carrie? Thank you, Don. Thank you very much. GSK CEO Emma Wormsley. Emma? Thank you very much, Emma. Great job. Merck CEO Rob Davis. Great company. Thank you. Great company. How long have you been CEO?
Almost 5 years.
Very good. You're doing a good job. And Amgen Executive Vice President and CFO Peter Griffith. Peter? Thank you, Peter, very much. Thank you very much. You okay? Fake news. We want you to be healthy. Are you all right? The camera's not okay, but she's okay. That's more important. We have good medicine for you. If you need some medicine, one of them can take good care of it. We're also joined by Secretaries Robert F. Kennedy, Jr., Howard Lutnick, ambassador, and really some incredible ambassadors, Administrator of the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Dr. Mehmet Oz, and the FDA Commissioner, Marty McCary. They're doing a phenomenal job. Thank you. Thank you, fellas. Good job. For decades, Americans have been forced to pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs by far, not just a little bit. We were like a whipping post, the United States, and it's just been 4% of the world's population. We have 4% of the world's population, and consumers pay only 13% of all prescription drugs, yet pharmaceutical companies make 75% of their profits. Think of that. So we have 4% of the population, 13% of prescription drugs, and yet the people behind me, who are wonderful people, make 75% of their profits from the American customer. So they understood that better than anybody, that we have to do something. That's why I signed an executive order instructing my administration to do everything in its power to slash prescription drug prices for Americans while getting other countries to pay more. And we don't want more. We want this fair. We want to pay the same thing. They used to blame it, remember, on research and development. And I said, well, research and development for everybody. and everybody understood it. As a result, the United Kingdom's National Health Service agreed to pay the fair share for prescription drugs for the first time in 26 years, and we expect other countries in Europe will do the same. And if they don't, we're going to put tariffs on them, and we'll get the same amount of money, plus we'll take a nice return on the money. We signed historic agreements with Pfizer, Eli Lilly, AstraZeneca, Novo Nordisk, and EMD, Serrano, to reduce prices by 300, 400, 500, 600, and even 700%, and sometimes even more than that. I remember when I had a news conference in my first term, I was the first president that reduced prices from the beginning of my term to a year, from January to December, 0.25%. And I thought it was the greatest thing because it's the first one in 28 years. Now we're talking about numbers that are so incredible. 0.25%. Think of that. I was proud of it because it hadn't happened in 28 where drug prices went down. Well, now you're going to see numbers that nobody would believe possible. Think of that. 500, 600, 700, 800%. Today we're building on these accomplishments. The companies assembled in this room have agreed to offer all of their drugs to Medicaid and most favored nations pricing. You're going to get most favored nations pricing, meaning they're going to pay our country the lowest price paid anywhere in the world. And they will list their most popular drugs on TrumpRx.gov. TrumpRx.gov. And I didn't name it that. Somebody named it that. And I guess they assumed that was, did you name it, Oz, or Bobby name it?
We all named it together.
Okay, well, I'm honored to have the name. And so far that's turned out because the numbers are so incredible. It's an honor. And you're going to get massive discounts to all consumers. So massive discounts will be not even offered. It's just going to be a fact. All consumers will get massive discounts. That's TrumpRx.gov. Every new drug produced by these companies in the future will permanently be offered to American patients at most favored nation prices. You know, people used to talk about that for years, but nobody ever did anything about it. No other president did. And it wasn't easy, but it worked out great, and I'm so proud of the people behind me. As an example of the price reductions we have secured through these new agreements, Santa Fe will cut the cost of its blood thinner, Plavix, from $750 to less than $16. Wow. Where's Santa Fe? Where are you? What? That's incredible, huh? Could have gone to $17, maybe. That's amazing. And you're going to do tremendous business. You're going to do much more business. So that's coming from $750, think of that, $750. And that's the number one blood thinner. I don't want to know about that. I take an aspirin. To less than $16, think of that. Bristol Myers Squibb, a great company, both great companies, will cut the price of HIV medication, Raytaz, from nearly $1,500, $1,500 to $217. And it will cut the cost of hepatitis B medication, Baraclude, from $1,400 to $413. Gilead will cut the hepatitis C medication, Epclusa, from nearly $25,000 to less than $2,500. And all prices are like that because we're bringing them down to the world's lowest price, everything. And these people really are pioneers. What they're doing is so great. And in the end, they're going to do much more business, and it's, I think it's going to even out for them as a company. The countries will have to pay more, but even for them, because of the fact that the world is quite a bit bigger, it won't be very severe, I hope. I also want to thank these companies and their incredible executives for their generous contribution to American national security, because it's really what it is. It's, to a large extent, national security in addition. You can't continue to pay 13, 14 times more than other countries and think you're going to have security. Collectively, they will invest over $150 billion to build up domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing in America. They're going to be, because of tariffs, they're coming in, and I think because of the love of our country, and maybe because of the November 5th election, but because of tariffs, they're going to be coming in. They're building already. Just about all of them have started. They're building their plants in all states all over the country, and they're building incredible pharmaceutical plants. We're going to have close to 100% of our pharmaceuticals in a very short period of time made in the USA. As part of these agreements, Merck will also donate 3.5 tons of antibacterials to be placed in America's strategic reserve. Thank you very much. GSX will donate over 200 pounds of ingredients to make rescue inhalers, which is a big deal, and Bristol-Myers Squibb will donate 6.5 tons of blood thinners. We appreciate it. Such amazing companies. Every president for a generation has promised to reduce drug prices, but they were talking about a little bit like that. I am the only one of them to ever even think in terms of favored nations, and that's what this is. Favored nations. It's called most favored nation. We are now a most favored nation. I want to thank the leaders in the room, and I also want to thank the leaders of all of the countries that had to pay a little more so that we were treated fairly. I really do. I want to thank the leaders of countries. And they knew the alternative was not much of an alternative, because if they didn't do it, we were going to charge them tariffs, and the tariffs would have been much more severe than what they did. But they did do it as soon as they realized about the tariffs. Then they did it very easily. No, they're very good people. Let's start with Amgen's Executive Vice President, who I already introduced, and I introduced the people here. So I'd like to ask Bobby and Oz to say a few words, and also I'd like to ask if anybody would like to speak on behalf of your company, or just say how great this country is doing. And you're all building tremendous facilities now in the United States instead of other countries that we all know about. But if you'd like to say something. So Oz, do you want to start? And Bobby?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Mr. President, he gets taller with time here. Mr. President, each of the 9 CEOs will speak very briefly about what they have done, because it is a patriotic effort. This is affordability in action. We talk about it in abstract, but this is not an abstract concept. This is a very concrete, tangible, personal reality, because we've got moms with sick children who cannot afford their medications. Working families cannot make ends meet. Seniors on fixed income. We have 80 million people who have to pay more than $100 a month for their prescriptions. They just can't keep up. So this is a hardcore approach to this, driven by a bold leader who's taken bold action. With that bold action, we've now created a standard for the industry. The 9 leaders behind us run the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. They're joining 5 other companies that have been through this White House process over the last 2 months. I want to make sure you appreciate that it doesn't happen with just the people in the room. They're wonderful individuals: Chris Klump, Inma Hernandez, John Brooks, Theo Merkel, Corey, Heidi. A lot of folks work their tails off to make this happen, and that's why we've gotten to the finish line. The prices that President Trump left to the next administration on pharmaceuticals have gone up 25% until the president took office. We are reversing that trend and making sure that Americans can afford to get the life-saving solutions. Because if these brilliant innovators create solutions to cancer and hypertension, hepatitis, and a bunch of other viruses, illnesses that have been lethal throughout human history, but you can't afford them, then we're not treating you fairly. And that's why what the president has done is so critically important. He mentioned quickly the amount of money that they've contributed towards our strategic stockpile and to building in this country. But fundamentally, the health of the American people will benefit because this president took bold action. And from my personal position, I couldn't do anything I do without Secretary Kennedy, who just does not take no for an answer and will call me even more than the president does to make sure things happen right. Mr. Secretary. Even more.
That's not nice. I don't think that's true. I think we got a lot of calls from the president, and at one point in this negotiation, we both stopped answering our phones late at night because we couldn't take it anymore. But I want to thank you, Mr. President, for doing this. President Trump, when he was up here a moment ago, talked about how historic this is and how every one of the news outlets in here ought to have World War III size headlines about this. And I was reminded about how astonishing this achievement is. A couple of days ago, when one of my sons, 29 years old, very, very left-wing Democrat, and disagrees with a lot of the policies of this administration, he called me and he said, Dad, I want to tell you how proud I am about this. This is the best achievement that could happen to our country. This is something Bernie Sanders has been clamoring for 25 years. Elizabeth Warren has been clamoring for. Joe Biden promised the American people. President Obama, President Clinton all promised to do this for the American people. All of them expressed their outrage, their indignation that we are paying 1/10 in some cases the price of drugs that they're selling in Europe. We developed them here. We manufactured some of them in New Jersey. We were paying $1,300 for a drug manufactured in New Jersey. The same drug manufactured in the same plant was being sold for $88 in London. And everybody recognized how unfair this was. We were paying for all the innovation in this country. And yet, the rest of the world was free riding on it. And President Trump told me and Dr. Oz at the beginning of this term, this is what I want you to do. And he leaned on us. I think both of us were very skeptical at that point that it could be done. But I would say this is a miracle. And I'm very grateful to all the CEOs who saw the sense in this, who understood the injustice and the unsustainability of the system, and who put public health, and particularly the public health of Americans, ahead of some of their other priorities. And all of them came to the table, and President Trump asked us to do three things. One, to deliver the lowest prices in the world and make this affordable for Americans. Number two, to do it in a way that we would not hurt innovation, that we would keep America as the incubator and the dominating force in innovation around the world. And three, to bring drug manufacturing home to this country. I can tell you by the end of this term, 95% of the drugs we will have MFN. In other words, Americans will be paying the lowest price in the world, or 95% of the drugs. You talk about affordability, people are talking about affordability. Nobody has done anything for affordability greater than this. So I want to thank you, President Trump, for your leadership, for your vision, and for your relentless harassment of us to make sure this all got done. And I really want to just thank all of the CEOs, all these companies, for coming to the table in good faith, working out a very, very pragmatic agreement that allows them to continue to do the innovation that is going to save lives and alleviate suffering around the world, and do it in a way that is more fair to the American people. Thank you.
So we're going to, Howard first.
So this is an example of what President Trump does. It's the entire administration, the whole government working together. Bobby and I met at the beginning of the administration of how we could work together to bring drug prices down, as the president instructed, and bring manufacturing home. So they've said they're going to have 95% of the drugs be at the lowest price in the world. And when we walked in, and the president walked in, we were making about 16% of our drugs were being made in America, right? And we are having hundreds, the people behind us are committed hundreds of billions of dollars to bring their manufacturing here and bring their research here. And that employs Americans and keeps our drugs produced safely. You want to know when you take that drug is made in America, overseen by the FDA, and it is safe. So the president not only is driving prices down, he's doing a 1-2 punch of bringing production here. And the third thing he's doing is when you take that drug, you know it was made in America, protected by Americans, and it's safe. And I can't be more proud. I think this is the most impressive thing I've ever seen, because none of you, and even maybe even none of us, thought this was possible. Only President Trump, he knew it. He drove it, and he has delivered it here today, and I can't be more proud to be standing next to him because this is delivering for America.
Thank you. Very good.
We start with Amgen. It is alphabetical.
If you'd like to say something, feel free to do that.
They're all going to say something short, so go ahead.
Good. Would you go ahead?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President.
To the podium.
To the podium. Here we go. Well, I'm going to move it back up, get taller again. Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity to work with you to improve the affordability of medicines for American patients. Amgen recently launched Amgen Now, a direct-to-patient option for Repatha that cuts out PBM middlemen and significantly improves affordability for people who are uninsured, facing high out-of-pocket costs, or paying on their own. Repatha will also soon be added to TrumpRx.com. A U.S.-based pioneer for more than 4 decades, we've invested more than $40 billion in U.S. research and manufacturing since 2018, supported by pro-innovation policies that you've championed. Thank you again, Mr. President. We look forward to continuing to work together to deliver meaningful benefits and innovation for U.S. patients.
Thank you very much. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jean-Michel Boers from Boehringer Ingelheim. It's a true honor to be here for an agreement that we believe will make a true difference for American patients. For 140 years, Boehringer Ingelheim, a family-owned company, has been committed to improving health and outcomes to save lives of patients. With today's agreement, we believe that we have actually struck the delicate balance that there is to protect America's leadership in research and innovation, and at the same time ensure that patients pay a fair price for their medicines. So from rare diseases in oncology or pulmonary fibrosis, where we do research into chronic diseases, diabetes, chronic kidney disease, obesity maybe in the future, I will go quick. We will continue to work for the American patients. We are onshoring manufacturing to the U.S. to very rapidly, within the time of this administration, have the majority of our products produced in the U.S. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bristol Myers Squibb is an American company that for more than 6,500 years has been protecting and extending American lives. And today I'll make 2 very brief announcements. One, we are very proud to announce that we will provide Eliquis, our #1 prescribed medicine, to Medicaid for free. We're also answering the administration's calls, as the president said, to shore up the national medicine reserves by donating more than 6.5 tons of Eliquis. These actions build on BMS's commitment to invest $40 billion in the U.S. in research and development and manufacturing. And these investments reflect our enduring commitment to work with the administration to improve patient lives. So thank you. Thank you.
It's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for shining a light on the importance of our innovation and getting all countries to pay for this innovation. I'm proud to represent Genentech, America's first biotech company. We are offering our flu medicine, which is very important this year given the severity of the flu, Xofluza, for $50 direct to patients, and that's a 70% price reduction, and that also will be available on TrumpRx. We're also very proud of our $50 billion investment in U.S. manufacturing and new research labs. Our new facility in North Carolina will bring 11,000 jobs to America. These are important steps forward for Americans and also for patients. Thank you very much.
I saw your rendering is beautiful, what you're building. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, to you and the administration. I think this objective of achieving the commitment to affordability and future innovation is extraordinary. And let me just say that the company I represent, Gilead Sciences, the scientists reach for cures every day. In fact, they've come up with medicines that have cured both certain forms of hepatitis and also certain forms of blood cancer. And we just recently launched a new medicine that's only given twice a year to prevent HIV. And we're working with Secretary Kennedy and his entire team, as well as the State Department, as a part of your ex-US strategy to support ending the epidemic really during your term. And so we look forward to working with you on that. I've never been more optimistic about the innovation that exists across these companies and the impact this can have on America's health and economy. Thank you very much.
Well, with HIV.
Yeah, it literally prevents HIV almost 100% given twice a year. And so the America First State Department strategy, we've partnered with them, and we're also partnering with Secretary Kennedy and his team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
GSK cares deeply about improving the affordability of medicines, which is why today we're announcing for the 40 million Americans who live with asthma or COPD, we're going to be significantly lowering the cost of the medicines they rely on to breathe more easily every day. We're going to be going direct on 8 of our core medicines with deep discounts, and we're investing in American health security by donating the ingredients that go into rescue inhalers like this one so that people can access them when they need them. This triple win is on top of our commitment to invest $30 billion in American manufacturing, American research, American technology, and American talent. And all of this to do the right thing for American patients, whether that's John in North Carolina, who says he can now visit with his granddaughters without worrying whether will have to struggle for breath, or Marsha in Kentucky, who says if her asthma inhaler is cheaper, she can properly celebrate with her family this holidays. Mr. President, thank you so much for your ambition for American patients and for the partnership of all of your teams so we get ahead of disease together.
Thank you very much. Very much. Great company.
Mr. President, as the others have said, I just want to say thank you for your leadership. I reflect on your goal of driving affordability and access to Americans, but equally getting prices up outside the United States, and we're 100% supportive of your actions. As many of the colleagues have talked about, I represent Merck, and we also are looking to what we can do on TrumpRx.gov. In addition to bringing in our diabetes drugs, one of the things I just wanted to highlight, we have a novel oral cardiovascular drug, which has an opportunity to meaningfully lower LDL and really still go after what is the leading cause of death in the United States, which is cardiovascular disease, kills 1 million people in the United States annually. And thanks to TrumpRx.com, you will not only be able to get this pill and have an easy-to-take pill, but it'll be easy to get and it'll be affordable. So I appreciate your leadership and look forward to continuing to partner with you. Thank you.
Great company. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, my name is Vas Narasimhan, CEO of Novartis. Novartis is a 250-year-old company, and today we're the global leader in bringing advanced technologies to patients in the United States around the world, technologies like radioligand therapies and cell and gene therapies. What I want to highlight to you is we're bringing the manufacturing of these technologies to the United States now. We've committed to build 9 new facilities. 7 of them we already have a groundbreaking for. Dr. Makari was with me in North Carolina. We were opening up 4 new plants. Our plan is to scale manufacturing here and ensure all our critical medicines, including these most advanced technologies, are made here in the United States for U.S. patients.
Thank you very much.
So first of all, thank you, Mr. President. I think you've convened on an extremely important subject and made more progress than perhaps anybody ever thought was frankly possible. For Sanofi, this is another day to reaffirm our commitment to patients, our unwavering support to trying to do the right thing to help patients get better outcomes. But simply, affordability has been at the heart of that for a very long time. Having concluded this contract with the President and the administration, we find ourselves able, as a joint effort, to go further than we ever thought was possible. And that's kudos to you and for what you have done. Improving affordability and preserving innovation and rewarding innovation is a very difficult balance to take. I think we feel the negotiations and the conversations have had the patient at the center throughout the entire time, as difficult as it may have been on occasions. I think what many can learn from the way this was handled, put simply, is that when you bring industry and you bring government together with the spirit of doing the right thing for patients, it is almost limitless what can be achieved. So on behalf of Sanofi, I'd like to thank you, Mr. President, and the team for what has been simply an incredible amount of progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
So, as I watch, these are the greatest business leaders, and they're beyond that. Many are doctors, and they ended up running the biggest businesses in the country. But you've done so much, and you made it a lot easier than we thought it would be. You were just, you understood to do the right thing. And as I was watching, and I know all of them, not personally, a couple of them personally, but I know them all through reading lots of business magazines and other magazines and newspapers. These are highly respected people. And I said to myself, look at what they've done. They've done something that, and as you said, something that you never thought was possible to get done. Most people thought for the United States to have favored nations where we have the lowest drug price in the world is unthinkable. And I said to myself, we have a thing called the Unaffordable Care Act. It's unaffordable because the insurance companies make so much money, and the insurance companies totally control the Democrats. And I said to myself, standing watching these great leaders, and we have 4 other leaders coming in, Johnson & Johnson and 4 other very big companies, actually, very great companies. They've all agreed, and they'll be coming in next week, and we appreciate them too. But they've agreed to the same thing, lowest price anywhere in the world. I said, I think that the insurance companies, we should have a meeting and we should talk to them. Because I would say that maybe with one talk, they would be willing to cut their prices by 50, 60, or 70%. They've made a fortune. They've had stock prices that have gone up 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and even 18. Think of this. They went up 1,800%. One of them went up, numbers that nobody's ever seen before. They had a nice return, not a 2%, an 1,800% return. One went up more than that. Therefore, there's a lot of fat that can be cut. And I'd like to announce here, this is just an idea that I had standing here, watching these great leaders saying that we're going to have the lowest prices anywhere in the world, something that nobody would have thought possible. And they're going to come out great. But also donating incredible different medications, medications that are world-famous medications that one or another of them make, and donating them in some cases for free or very, very low prices. And I said, I'll bet you if I called a meeting of the insurance companies, the companies that are involved with healthcare costs, I would be willing to bet, I think, that they would reduce their prices very, very substantially. We could have fair health care in the country. Now, my initial thought, and this is what I want to do as of right now, this is the alternative, is that all of the billions and billions, ultimately trillions and trillions of dollars that's paid to these companies, we're going to pay directly to the people. But there's another way of doing it, and that's getting the insurance companies to ease up and to cut their pricing way, way down and stay part of the system. So I'm going to call a meeting. It could be in Florida this coming week, or it could be back in the White House the first week, not the second or third week. I'm going to call a meeting of the big insurance companies that have gotten so rich by receiving money, and really much, far, far more money than they're entitled to. And I have a feeling maybe if they would act like these incredible, brilliant, responsible citizens behind me, people that love our country, and they love the world. I mean, frankly, these are international companies for the most part. I'm going to call a meeting of the insurance companies. I'm going to see if they get their price down, to put it very bluntly. And I think that is a very big statement. And what happened here is the biggest statement of all, because nobody thought a thing like this was possible. And I think based on that, I won't even take questions today, because there's no way I can take questions that are anywhere comparable to what you just witnessed. You just witnessed drug prices that will go down at levels never thought even possible, Marty, right? Never thought even possible. And I think that the second biggest part of this meeting is going to be the fact that I'm going to call in the insurance companies that are making so much money and they have to make less, a lot less. And maybe we can have reasonable health care without having to cut them out and let it all go awry. So we're going to be calling a meeting. It'll be either in Florida or it'll be here the first week. And I'd prefer not talking and asking questions, only for the reason that this is such a big announcement, meaning what these people have said and what the other 4 companies are going to say, which is exactly the same thing, that I really don't want to soil it up by asking questions, even questions that are very fair questions that I'd love to answer. So I think we have to just stop right here. I really appreciate the fact that these companies came here. These, again, a lot of the media is not aware, not really cognizant of the people standing behind me. These are the biggest executives in the world. And what they're doing today is monumental. And I want to stand it on that. And I'll see you later if you'd like. But I don't want to be asking questions having to do with anything else. I do want you to remember what I said about the 4.5%. We took 100% of the new workers was in the private sector, and we've cut tremendous numbers of government jobs. And that's why, if you look at our numbers, they're so good. Also, more than, I don't know if you've read this, came out a week ago, more than 50% of our trade deficit was cut. We cut it more than 50% in a period of a few months. Nobody thought any of these things were possible. Thank you very much, everybody.
Your insurance idea? Thank you about your insurance idea, Mr. President. Thank you, press.
Invite them to the Oval Office. Invite them to the Oval Office. Have you seen the Oval Office? They haven't seen the Oval Office? Come on in.
Can we ask you about your name going up on the Kennedy Center? Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Sir, your name is now on the Kennedy Center. Can we ask you about that? Thank you. Thank you, press.
What will you tell the insurance companies, Mr. President?
Alrighty, we were waiting to see if the president would take any questions. He did not after that announcement on medication, also saying that he will meet with big insurance companies. Want to take you right now to some more news we're following. The NTSB is holding a press conference right now in Statesville, North Carolina, where that crash occurred yesterday, killing that NASCAR member and a few members of his family as well. Let's go live there and listen in.
Safety recommendations to prevent future tragedies like this from ever happening again. We do not assign blame or liability. We are here on scene to gather perishable evidence, which our team methodically and systematically reviews throughout the course of the investigation to determine the probable cause. We have a team of 16 experts from the NTSB here with us, being led by our investigator in charge, Dan Baker. Dan is a senior accident investigator with more than 25 years experience at accident investigations, both at the NTSB and the Air Force. Dan and our team are also supported by our deputy investigator in charge, Andrew Swick, and he is currently at the accident site at this time. I want to emphasize this is the beginning of a very long process, and we will not jump to any conclusions while we're here on scene in North Carolina, nor will we speculate. Early this morning, we held an organizational meeting where we established parties to the investigation. The NTSB offers party status to those we believe provide needed technical or specialized expertise to the investigation. Eventually, each investigative group, which I will describe in a minute, will produce a factual report, which each of the parties will verify its accuracy. Importantly, however, parties do not participate in the analysis or the report writing. Parties to the investigation so far are the Federal Aviation Administration, and they are always a party to an aircraft accident, and Textron Aviation Incorporated, which was the manufacturer of the aircraft. Additionally, Pratt & Whitney Canada, the engine manufacturer, is serving as technical advisor to the investigation. As part of our investigation, we formed groups to examine specific areas of interest in depth. These groups include subject matter experts from the parties of our investigation, working in conjunction with our NTSB specialists on the factual portions of the investigation. For this accident, we have established the following parties. First one is systems. They will examine components of the airplane's hydraulic, electrical, navigational, pneumatic, and associated systems, together with instruments and elements of the flight control system. The group will also examine the maintenance records. Another group is power plants, which will examine engines and the engine accessories. And the final group we have at this time, although we can add groups if necessary, is operations, which will document the history of the flight and the crew members' flight experience, training, and certification. A preliminary report of this accident is expected within 30 days. However, a full investigation lasts 12 to 18 months before a final report is released. The information that we provide today is preliminary, and it's subject to change during the course of this investigation. I would now like to turn it over to our investigator in charge, Dan Baker, to share some factual information. Dan.
Thank you, Member Graham. The aircraft was manufactured in 1981 by the Cessna Aircraft Company, and it was registered to GB Aviation Leasing, LLC. The airplane had taken off at approximately 10:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, about 10 minutes prior to the accident. The airplane had departed from runway 28 at the Statesville Regional Airport. Preliminary ADS-B data showed the airplane made an initial left turn to the west, followed by another left turn back to the east towards the airport, approximately 5 minutes after takeoff. The airplane then flew a left base turn to runway 28. The initial point of impact was a runway light stanchion located about 1,800 feet from the runway threshold. The airplane subsequently impacted trees, 2 other runway light stanchions, and the airport perimeter fence short of the runway threshold before coming to rest near the runway threshold. The airplane also came to rest oriented on an easterly heading. Post-impact fire consumed the majority of the fuselage and the inboard wing sections. All 4 corners of the airplane and flight control surfaces have been identified in the wreckage and the debris field. Both engines were present with the main wreckage. At the time of the accident, visual meteorological conditions prevailed with drizzle and broken ceilings at 1,200 and 2,200 feet, as well as a 5,000-foot ceiling were present. The wind was calm with 5 statute miles visibility. I will now hand it over to Member Graham for any questions.
A few more things before I take questions. We are analyzing radar, ADS-B data, video footage, witness statements.
All right, an update there at the press conference. Of course, the NTSB there holding a press conference on that crash that occurred in Statesville, North Carolina. We've been following this throughout the last, since yesterday when it all began to occur. Of course, that crash did kill the former NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, rather. Let's take a look there on your screen. That's a post from NASCAR on their X page. Before they take questions there, that is going to wrap it up for our coverage on this Friday. We'll see you right back here Monday Probably we'll do in the same type of coverage a little earlier. We'll do it a little earlier because, of course, winter break has begun. So we'll probably begin doing our coverage a little bit earlier and then just kind of continue. Of course, you guys bringing the top stories that we have for you. So we'll keep doing that. In the meantime, let me get the right graphics ready because that does it for us. We hope you all have a great rest of your day. Again, I will see you right back here on Monday, December 22nd, and we'll have the top headlines happening then.